King of France. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. The Young Incorruptible. After making the decision, Mirabeau stood up, gulped down the sweet tea, and then said to Ning, "Let's go. There will be food at the club, so we won't have lunch. And Ning, you forgot that I am a commoner, and commoners only have 2 meals a day, morning and evening. In fact, Ning is used to 3 meals a day, but his body is a native of this time and space, so he has been used to 2 meals a day. Mirabeau, I almost have 2 meals a day, but I have to eat something in the afternoon to fill my stomach, otherwise I will be hungry at night. Okay, let's go, Mrs. Evans, I won't be back until the evening." The old lady nodded. Fanny asked, "Do you want me to help you hire a carriage?" "No, we can stop one on the street." Mirabeau waved his hand. "You just go back to the Duke's house and wait." Fanny nodded, then pressed her hands on the maid's skirt and bowed to Ning. "Then I will go home first. I hope you can meet Mr. Robespierre smoothly. Well, be careful on the way back." And Ning waved her hand. "Mirabeau, did you walk here?" "Yes, after all, I live only 1 block away from you, and I just didn't know it was so close." And Ning responded. "But you have to take a car to go to the Breton Club. After all, you have to cross 2.5 districts of Paris." Mirabeau said so. At this time, the city of Paris was already quite large, only slightly smaller than the later Greater Paris area. Later, France decided to build a fortress-like wall around Paris to surround the entire Paris, and the outline of this wall almost overlapped with the outline of modern Paris. It can only be said that France at this time already had the foundation for a civic revolution. There were a large number of citizens. The huge Paris and the people of Paris were the basis for everything that happened later. Theoretically speaking, there were only 2 cities in modern Europe that had the foundation for a civic revolution. One was Paris and the other was London. But Britain had become bourgeois after the Glorious Revolution, so the Great Revolution eventually broke out in France. As soon as Mirabeau went out, he immediately stopped a 2-wheeled carriage. And Ning sat in the carriage and crossed the city of Paris. He leaned on the car window, looking at the busy streets of Paris outside the car window, and once again sighed at the prosperity of the city. Mirabeau looked at Ning's expression and said, "You can't see such scenes in your hometown, right? Paris has the most cafes, taverns and tennis courts. In the afternoon, salons are held everywhere, and the wives of the petty bourgeoisie imitate the ladies in the salons. And Ning, don't gentlemen attend salons? Gentlemen have to work, as clerks, lawyers, doctors, or engineers." Mirabeau said self-deprecatingly, "Just like me, a writer funded by the Duke, I can often attend the ladies' salons." And Ning joked, "I guess these salons also provide you with a lot of writing inspiration." "That's right. You probably don't know, the Queen's love stories that I wrote were first told to me by the ladies. For example, the Queen's Swedish lover was also first rumored by the ladies, and then it came to my ears." And Ning, "Then you let the whole of Paris know. Did the Swede restrain himself afterwards?" "Not at all. In fact, it is basically an open matter for noble ladies to have lovers. It would be abnormal if they don't have 1 or 2 lovers. Correspondingly, husbands will also have mistresses, but our king is a little special." And Ning teased, "He prefers to tinker with locks." "Yes. So he doesn't have a mistress, which is unique in the aristocratic circle of Paris." And Ning raised her eyebrows, and suddenly thought of something, so she asked, "Does the Duke of Orleans, does Mr. Telestal also have a mistress?" "Of course, the Duchess also has a lover, but the Duchess's lover is a beautiful woman in men's clothing, Ms. Oscar, a colonel of the guards who guard the palace." And Ning almost spit out. "Ms. Oscar, and an officer of the palace guards, what kind of plot is this, the Rose of Versailles?" But in the Rose of Versailles, Oscar and Queen Mary had a lesbian relationship. Will Oscar, the beautiful woman in men's clothing, die in the battle at the main gate of the Bastille like in the comics? What kind of messed up world line have I traveled to? Mirabeau, okay, we're here. And Ning got off the car and looked at the building in front of him. Church. It's a monastery. The chapel was rented to the Bretons, so it became a gathering place. Mirabeau shrugged. In a place like Paris, the church generally doesn't have land, so they can only open the venue to believers who donate as a public venue. Many clubs are opened in monasteries. And Ning said, "Oh. Mirabeau led him to the main building of the monastery. As soon as he entered the door, it was as if he had entered a cafe. Gentlemen gathered around the table in groups of 3 or 5, discussing loudly. And Ning heard a young gentleman at the table next to the door say loudly, "It was a mistake to ally with Austria. We should ally with Britain." "What, are you kidding? Have you forgotten the 100 Years' War? The Maid of Orleans will cry in heaven," another gentleman retorted loudly. But the young gentleman was unmoved. "But look at the current situation. We have been cut off from more than 70% of our colonial trade by the British. Paris tobacco, chocolate and coffee are all in short supply, and even sugar has become extremely expensive. But what impact will it have on Austria? Austria doesn't have any colonies and is completely unaffected." And Ning couldn't help but interrupt and said, "Although it seems so, isn't the fundamental reason that our navy has never defeated the Royal Navy?" The gentlemen who were discussing loudly immediately turned their heads and looked at Ning in confusion. "Who are you?" the young man who spoke asked in confusion. "Ning, Andy Frost, from Scene." As soon as the gentleman who had just said not to forget the feud with the British said loudly, "Oh, I've heard of you. You defeated that Reginald yesterday. Well done." That Reginald has always looked down on people without noble titles and often provokes us. The young gentleman who had just stared at Ning aggressively immediately changed to a friendly expression, "Well done. Last time that guy provoked me at the salon, he said that my father was just a clerk of a noble lord. Damn it, my father is obviously the prosecutor of the town." And Ning, in Reginald's view, it probably doesn't matter what positions the common people hold, they are all common people anyway. Even among the nobles, there are very few such fools. Another gentleman said disdainfully, "I have found a pattern. The more rural the nobles are, the more likely they are to be such fools. Many of the great nobles in the city have opened their arms to the common people, such as the Duke of Orleans." At this time, Mirabeau interrupted, "Yes, there are many people in the enlightened aristocracy who agree with Rousseau and Montesquieu. This is a trend. It is that Reginald, a country noble, cannot keep up with the times. I just went to say hello to others. Now allow me to introduce you, Mr. Frost. This is George Jacques Danton from Troyes." And Ning looked at the young man suspiciously. "This is Danton, one of the giants of the Jacobin Club." And Ning's impression of Danton is still the image in later movies and TV series. He is gentle and refined, wearing a white wig, and looks like a book. But it turns out that he is such a young and stupid guy. He looks less than 20 years old. Wait a minute, and Ning vaguely remembered that when Danton was sent to the guillotine, he was only in his early 30s. Should he be a young boy now? So their images are different from the impressions of later generations. It's not because the world line is wrong, but because I came early? Danton stretched out his hand. "Nice to meet you. I heard that you are also a war hero who received the Legion of Service medal." And Ning held Danton's hand. "Indeed, but the medal has not been issued to me yet. Considering that my only achievement in the war was to rescue the eldest daughter of the Duke of Telestal, General Carnegie's medal application may be rejected." "Danton, no, the war has made everyone's life worse now, and His Majesty needs something to distract everyone. They will give you a medal. But you just said that the current bad situation is mainly because the Navy can't beat the Royal Navy. And Ning, isn't it?" "Of course not. Not long ago, when the North American colonies were clamoring for independence, the Navy won, so we were able to send Marcus Lafayette to North America to beat Cornwallis's British Army. And Ning, although the Navy won the American War of Independence, it is not so easy to defeat Britain with its naval tradition. After a few years, they licked their wounds and defeated our fleet again. If we want to defeat Britain with its long naval tradition, we must adopt technological innovations, such as installing steam engines on warships, building coal-fired ships, or using new breech-loading artillery." And Ning is also an old military man, and he will talk endlessly when talking about these things. However, several gentlemen laughed together as if they heard a joke. Danton patted Ning on the shoulder and said, "You are so smart. You want to use coal to propel the boat. Are you going to use a steam engine to row? And Ning, you can install a paddle wheel to row." "Oh my God, a paddle wheel. He actually wants to install wheels on the boat." Another gentleman shook his head and said, "The breech-loading cannon will never appear because the problem of the airtightness of the barrel cannot be solved. When the cannon is fired, most of the gunpowder will leak out from the back instead of being sprayed out from the muzzle. The airtightness of the flintlock is bad enough. We often hear that people get burned on their cheeks when firing. He actually wants to use it on a cannon." The gentleman commented on Ning's idea and seemed to think it was a fantasy. Mirabeau also smiled at Ning and said to her with his mouth, "Entertaining everyone is a good way to integrate into a new group." It seems that Mirabeau thought Ning deliberately made outrageous remarks to make everyone laugh. At this moment, a voice joined the conversation. "What are you laughing at? No one knows what the future will be like. Since you can believe that the nobles will be equal to the common people one day, why can't you believe in coal-fired sailing ships and breech-loading cannons? In my opinion, these are easier to achieve than the ideal of equality for all." Everyone turned their heads to look at the speaker. Ning looked at him carefully. He was probably in his early 20s, but he was not as unkempt as Danton. He wore a green coat and a wig on his head. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, but even those glasses could not hide his heavy dark circles. Danton obviously knew the newcomer. "Come on, Maximilian, when did you become an engineer tinkering with steam engines again?" Ning realized that the serious-looking young man in front of him was the famous incorruptible and Roman Maximilien François Marie Isidore de Robespierre. Chapter 27 Robespierre's Speculations. When Danton saw Robespierre, he smiled and said, "Maximilien, you seem to have been wearing this green coat for several weeks." Robespierre, "To be honest, I only have one coat." "Does this club determine the value of a person's speech by the number of coats?" Danton was a little embarrassed. "No, of course not. I occasionally go to watch the lectures of the Academy of Sciences, especially to watch Mr. Lavoisier's public experiments. Before Mr. Lavoisier, we thought that combustion was caused by phlogiston. This is an era of change. We should not stand on existing concepts and think that certain things cannot happen, otherwise we will be as ridiculous as those old pedants who laughed at Mr. Lavoisier." Robespierre glanced at Ning and said, "Although I personally cannot imagine an era when naval warships all burn coal, I will not say that that is definitely impossible. After all this time, you still don't believe that the era of burning coal will come. And Ning, we have already used steam engines to pump water and transport coal in mines. Why can't we believe that steam engines will enter our lives more widely? We will have steam-driven cars and ships, and we will also have steam-driven spinning machines." "I agree with the statement. Why not?" A new voice joined the conversation. Ning frowned as soon as he saw the speaker, because the speaker looked a little ugly. "Now is an era of great development of science and technology. I just wrote a paper and sent it to Mr. Lavoisier, but I haven't received a reply yet." The ugly guy said so. Everyone was silent for a while. Mirabeau saw this and immediately came out to continue to advance the topic. He said to Ning, "Let me introduce some. This gentleman in a green coat is Maximilien Robespierre, the Roman you are looking for. And the person who is committed to making achievements in science is Jean-Paul Marat, a well-trained doctor." Ning was shocked. "Well, Robespierre, Danton, Marat, plus a core group of Saint Just Jacobins are complete. But considering his age, Saint Just should be a little boy now." Robespierre looked at Ning in confusion. "Who are you?" Mirabeau immediately introduced, "This is the civilian swordsman who defeated Reginald yesterday, Andy Frost from Seine." Robespierre frowned slightly. "Reginald was defeated? When did it happen?" "Just yesterday. This was the hottest news yesterday." Danton smiled. "Didn't you read yesterday's special edition?" Robespierre, "A duel is worth a special edition. After all, it was that Reginald. You should have been humiliated by him, right?" Danton asked. "It seems that Reginald often humiliates people of common origin." Robespierre, "I don't have such an impression. So, Mr. Frost, what do you want from me?" "Ning, I might be sued by Reginald's father, Marcus Richard, so I need a lawyer who is willing to defend civilians." Robespierre, "That's no problem, of course, but I'm a law student who just got my degree. I have no experience in helping people with lawsuits. Is that a problem?" Danton interrupted, "He's fine. After all, he has always been the top student in college." Robespierre did not deny it, but looked at Ning seriously and asked, "Why do you think the Marcus will sue? Was there something wrong with the dual process? Didn't we find enough witnesses?" "No, there were witnesses from both parties and a third party, and a doctor confirmed that Reginald died on the spot." Ning answered truthfully. "Then even the Marcus can't sue me. You don't have to worry at all." "Ning, I'm just in case." "Just in case, you'd better recall the process of the duel carefully and help me determine where the other party might make trouble so that I can be prepared. Did any accidents happen during the duel?" Ning was about to answer no, but suddenly remembered what Reginald's friends had done, so he told Robespierre everything. "An accident did happen. After the duel, Reginald's friends wanted to shoot me, but the bullet was not loaded properly and rolled out of the muzzle before the shot was fired. Robespierre frowned. Who shot you? And Ning was stunned. He didn't even know the names of Reginald's friends. It was Mirabeau who came to the rescue. It was Quillet Moore, one of Reginald's cronies. He seemed to be a playmate that Reginald brought from the countryside. His parents were probably servants of the Marquis. Robespierre nodded and asked, "Did everyone present see Quillet Moore shoot you? Is anyone willing to testify?" Mirabeau patted his chest. "I was there and witnessed the whole process with my own eyes." Robespierre nodded. "I understand. I speculate that the Marquis may make a fuss about the validity of the duel. Once he can prove that there were violations in the duel, he can accuse you of murder." "And Ning, you mean he may slander me for firing a gun during the duel?" "Yes, after all, there were gunshots in the venue, and the noble ladies watching might not know who fired the gun. They would only tell the court that there was a gunshot at the scene. It should be easy for the Marquis to bribe a few witnesses to falsely accuse you of firing the gun." Robespierre looked confident. "Don't worry, the current French justice is no longer a place where the Marquis can reverse right and wrong by spending some money to give false testimony. Danton, after all, the Chief Justice has dared to veto even the King's decision. Marat, if we find the doctor who performed the autopsy, he should be able to prove that Reginald died of a knife wound." And Ning nodded. "I will go find him. In addition, Mr. Mabley, my witness, should also testify for me." "Mabley? The guy who demands equal distribution of wealth." Someone present frowned. "I don't like that guy. How did he get involved in this?" And Ning spread his hands. "When I threw the gloves at Reginald, Mabley happened to be giving a speech next to him. He witnessed the whole process and volunteered to be my witness." Mirabeau, by the way, the third-party witness of the duel was Father Sias. As soon as he finished speaking, Danton was amazed. "What kind of witness lineup do you have?" "They're all guys who oppose aristocratic privileges. I begin to believe that this is a murder." "Did you really agree to kill that guy?" "And Ning, I've just been in Paris for a few days. Before that, I didn't know Mabley and Mr. Sias at all. The Marquis will definitely not believe this." Robespierre, "It doesn't matter whether he believes it or not. What matters is whether the judge believes it or not. So when will the lawsuit start? Where is the Marquis now?" "And Ning, he should be on his way to Paris." Robespierre was stunned for a moment. "How can he sue you without coming to Paris?" "Through an agent." "No, I haven't been sued yet. I'm just preparing for a rainy day. In fact, it was because he had a nightmare of being sold out by a lawyer, so he came to find a reliable lawyer first." Robespierre seemed a little speechless. "Okay, it just so happens that I just finished my exams and got my degree recently, and I don't have anything to do. If you come to me a few days later, I might have to go back to Paris." Danton was a little shocked. "You are going back to Paris? I thought you would stay in Paris and be a lawyer." "The priest of Arras sponsored me to study at the Louis the Great School in Paris, and also sponsored my tuition at the University of Paris. I have to go back to serve my hometown." Robespierre answered seriously. "Danton, you don't miss life in Paris at all. For someone like me who only has one coat, there is no place worth staying in Paris except the high cost of living." Robespierre shrugged. "Of course, I admit that exchanging ideas with everyone in the club is a good thing, but that's all." After speaking, Robespierre looked at Ning. "I will stay in Paris for a while. If you are sued by the Marquis, please find me as soon as possible. I will write you my address. Whether I am there or not, you can leave a message to my landlady. In recent days, due to the epidemic, nucleic acid, and the purchase of daily necessities, life has been disrupted, so the update will be a bit messy, and I will update it as soon as I have finished coding. Please collect and recommend." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28, Future Thighs, Let Me Hug You. After finishing the business, Ning talked with the future Jacobin giants about coal-fired warships and cars. After everyone was led by Ning and talked about the future with great interest, the topic naturally turned to war. "I heard that the situation on the front line is very bad," a gentleman with a face that reminded people of V for Vendetta said worriedly. "It's terrible. We spent so much money to start a war, but ended up losing so miserably. It was obviously us, Shinra, and Russia that attacked Frederick together. How did it turn out like this? Mirabeau whispered in Ning's ear. This is the journalist Camille Desmoulins, a good friend of Danton. Danton suddenly looked at Ning when he heard Mirabeau's words. Hey, friends, isn't there someone who just came back from the battlefield? Wouldn't it be better to ask him about the situation on the battlefield? Everyone turned their heads to look at Ning. Robespierre, you actually came back from the battlefield. Danton, you really should have read yesterday's special edition. Frost is a war hero. And Ning waved her hand. What war hero? I am a military musician. I rescued Christina, the daughter of the Duke of Orleans, during the rout. Robespierre was confused. Why is the daughter of the Duke of Orleans in the army? Camille Desmoulins immediately replied, probably as a barmaid in the skirmisher unit. In order to ensure morale, the skirmisher unit would have barmaids to go to the front line with them, carrying wine jugs, and give a sip of wine to anyone who didn't have the courage. The cohesion of the troops in this era was not high. The reason why the troops had to line up in dense formations and line up for shooting was mainly to ensure that the troops would not rout. Once the formation was disbanded, the privates with low fighting desire would quickly collapse. Skirmishers need to fight in loose formations, so they are generally composed of robbers and criminals, and they will be equipped with barmaids to improve morale and fighting desire. The waitresses were usually young and beautiful girls. They would carry wine jugs and fight with the skirmishers, walking through the hail of bullets. Ning first learned about this when he read Hugo's masterpiece 93. He thought it was a unique system of the National Guard of Revolutionary France, but Camille Desmoulins' words showed that this configuration had already existed. After Camille Desmoulins finished speaking, Marat immediately retorted, how could the Duke let his daughter be a barmaid? Those people are in a sense military paramilitary, mainly used to inspire the hooligans and robbers who make up the skirmishers. You know, decent people will never go to the skirmishers, let alone the Duke's daughter. Ning, in fact, the Duke's daughter disguised herself as a man and charged with the line infantry. Danton, and you saved her, with what? Your drumstick. Ning, actually, I was stunned by the cannon. When I woke up, the drum was broken, and I didn't know where the drumstick was. The whole battlefield was shrouded in darkness, and the Germans, the Prussians were cleaning the battlefield in the distance. At this time, the Duchess, who was pretending to be a captain, pulled my leg and asked me to take her away. I said, go to hell, can't you see that she is injured? Everyone laughed together. Robespierre did not laugh, but asked Ning seriously, I don't understand, why did the Duchess dress up as a man to go to the battlefield? She is not that Miss Oscar. Ning shrugged, I heard that she wanted to enter the military school in Brienne in order to prevent the Duke from arranging a marriage for her. Danton, does she want to be a modern Joan of Arc? But what a coincidence, she happens to be the daughter of the Duke of Orleans, corresponding to the Maid of Orleans. But this Miss Joan of Arc did not lead us to victory. Camille looked at Ning. How did we get defeated? Tell me, was it a tactical mistake? Were we outflanked? Ning shook her head. No, at least I didn't see us being outflanked. We were facing the Prussians head-on the plains, and then we were defeated by the Prussians. Damn it, why? Marat slammed the table. How are we French worse than the Prussians? Everyone was silent. Ning looked at the situation and said, my personal feeling is that it is actually related to the reforms of Frederick the Great. The soldiers of the Prussian army are former serfs liberated by the great artisans and small producers in the city. They believe that the emperor is the first public servant of Prussia, and that they, like the officers, are equal before the law. They believe that they are fighting to defend their emperor and the good life they have been given. But our soldiers are different. Our soldiers don't want to fight this war at all. They are just animals driven to the battlefield by the nobles. Once the nobles nearby fall, they will retreat. After Ning finished speaking, the gentlemen looked at each other. Danton summarized Ning's words, you mean, the enlightened political system has led to differences in the desire to fight between the soldiers on both sides. Ning, that's what I mean. Danton had a thoughtful expression on his face, very insightful. I have never thought about this from this perspective. Ning continued, you see, after I actually experienced a battle, I found that the skirmish tactics are actually the most appropriate tactics, but everyone still lined up in dense formations to shoot at each other. The main reason is that once the line infantry disbanded the formation, they could not maintain morale and cohesion. But our army only has a small number of skirmishers, because we can't find so many prisoners and hooligans willing to go to the battlefield, But Prussia can use a large number of skirmishers, because they have high enough morale and cohesion, so that they will not turn around and run away after disbanding the formation. So we didn't lose to the Prussians, we lost to Prussia, which has carried out a series of enlightened reforms in terms of social system. If we want to change this situation, it is not enough to just reorganize the army, there must be more profound changes. In addition to the high morale, another reason why the army of revolutionary France was able to fight was that the citizens who had awakened their national consciousness could use skirmisher tactics in large numbers. Sometimes, half of an infantry regiment in the French Revolutionary Army could be divided into skirmishers, a proportion even higher than that of Austria, which had a tradition of using skirmishers. As a military enthusiast in the era of line-up shooting, Ning spoke eloquently in front of many people. Everyone listened to Ning's words attentively and nodded repeatedly. After Ning finished speaking, Robespierre suddenly said, "According to what you said, if we really do as Rousseau said and establish a society based on social contract and equality for all, the combat effectiveness of our army will be greatly enhanced." And Ning nodded, "Yes, I think so." Danton, very insightful. Are you really just the son of a shoemaker? Could it be that the rumor is true? You are actually the heir of a hidden noble. And Ning, why can't the son of a shoemaker say something insightful? All people are born equal. The son of a shoemaker can win a duel and can talk big. Birth cannot determine everything. After the words fell, the people around him looked at each other, and then Robespierre took the lead and began to applaud. "Well said. I am also a commoner, I support your point of view. Marat, at this time, we should have a toast and then shout 'Long live the commoners' together." The crowd shouted in unison, "Long live." The people chatting nearby looked over. Danton patted Ning on the shoulder. "It's worth coming to the club today to meet such an interesting person like you, even though I'm not from Brittany." And Ning nodded, "I'm glad to meet you too. Of course I'm glad. When the revolution breaks out, I'm counting on you guys to hug my thighs. Danton, I'm still going to study for a law degree in Paris. I hope to see you here often in the future." And Ning's system popped up a line of prompts. "Georges-Jacques Danton's favorability towards you has increased to friendly, and Ning looked at Danton and put on a regretful expression. "It's a pity that I'm going to Brienne to study at the military academy soon." Danton was surprised. "Why? Didn't you say that improving the combat effectiveness of the French army should start with social change? You should go to the University of Paris, and then we can change this society together." And Ning thought that it was because there was a thigh named Bonaparte waiting for me to hug at the Brienne Military Academy. Of course, Danton, Robespierre, etc. are also thighs, but this thigh has a time limit, and it can't be hugged after the Jacobins' fall. It should be said that when the policy of terror began to expand, it was risky to hold on to this thigh. It was still good in the early and middle stages, but in the later stages, it still depended on the emperor. But Ning couldn't say it so clearly, so he could only answer, "I found that I seemed to have a little talent in adapting to the battlefield." Marat said, "Being a soldier can also participate in social changes. Look at me, I'm still a doctor, but I'm not here to talk with you." Danton, "That's right. I just feel it's a pity that I can't listen to your insights often in the future. And with your knowledge, being a sergeant is a bit of a waste." Mirabeau interrupted and said, "The Duke has promised that after funding Frost to complete Brienne's studies, he will continue to support his studies at the Paris Military Academy. He is not just a sergeant. After graduating from the Paris Military Academy, he will be an officer who can wear a semicircular breastplate." Robespierre looked at Ning. "It takes courage for a civilian to enter the Paris Military Academy. That place is full of aristocratic children with big brains. They will definitely not let you go." Chapter 29, How the Countryside Nobles Deal with It. And Ning smiled and said, "Can you be more outrageous than Reginald?" Everyone laughed. "Danton, I have a feeling that many people will challenge you to a duel. Are you going to defeat them all with your superb swordsmanship?" And Ning thought to himself, "Don't be like this, I almost died. The reason why I look unscathed is because I have a special skill to breathe and recover blood." And Ning scratched his head while thinking, and put on a troubled look. "Forgive me, I really won this time by luck. I don't know anything about swordsmanship." "Marat, then we should publicize it vigorously. The nobles who have a carefully trained in swordsmanship were defeated by the son of a cobbler who is an outsider. This further proves that the nobles are nothing special at all. And Ning has already seen that the Marat of this time and space is a passionate young man, a middle school boy, a middle school youth. At this time, a waiter of the club said loudly, "It's dinner time. The club will provide meals. Those who need them can come here to eat." Mirabeau touched his stomach and said, "Oh, I'm hungry. The roast chicken here is a must." And Ning was about to complain that Mirabeau had eaten so much before coming here, but his stomach also started to growl. It was indeed time for his usual dinner. Robespierre also said, "Let's have dinner. Marat, will you play bridge after dinner? If you haven't played bridge, it's like you came to the club for nothing." Danton, that's right. Bridge is the best way to get in touch with new friends. Let's have a good game of bridge to welcome the new member Frost. As soon as the voice fell, and Ning's system popped up a prompt again. You are now regarded as a comrade by Georges-Jacques Danton, Jean-Paul Marat, Maximilien Robespierre, and Camille Desmoulins. And Ning was shocked. Well, if I am regarded as a comrade by this group of people, then when the Great Revolution happens in the future, I will also be a member of the Mountain Party. I also want to be flexible in riding the fence. And Ning, I have never played bridge. It doesn't matter, Mirabeau said, the rules of bridge are very simple. You will learn it after playing a few games. And Ning, okay, then count me in tonight. That night, and Ning crossed the whole of Paris and returned to her residence in the royal palace at nearly 12 o'clock. As soon as the carriage stopped in and Ning hadn't opened the door of the residence was opened. Fanny pushed the door open and ran over to help Ning get off the car. And Ning, thank you, it's so nice to see you waiting for me. Fanny, is bridge fun? And Ning was shocked, how did you know I played bridge? So you really went to play bridge? Fanny was shocked. I was calculated. Fanny, as a master, you are free to do whatever you want. Even if you lose all your clothes playing bridge, it's none of my business. And Ning, no, in fact, the people from the Brittany Club don't gamble at all when playing bridge, probably because they don't have much money. For example, Robespierre, he even has only one coat. Fanny looked at Ning puzzledly, what's the point of playing bridge if you don't gamble? And Ning, can't you just enjoy the fun of competing with friends? Fanny looked at Ning with an expression of looking at a fool, and then changed the subject. Do you want to take a bath tonight? If you do, I'll get you some water. There should be some hot water left today. And Ning, thank you. About 15 minutes later, and Ning was soaking in the bathtub comfortably. The hot water made his body completely relaxed, and he lay in the bathtub and began to recall what he had gained today. And Ning directly got to know the core members of the Mountain Party, so that he would not have to worry about the bloodiest period of the Great Revolution. Next, as long as he went to the Brienne Military Academy and established a good relationship with Napoleon, he would be able to sit on the Diaoyote in the second half of the revolution. As for the first half of the revolution, the policy of terror had not yet been implemented at that time, and the National Convention would not easily send people to the guillotine. In theory, it would not be a big problem even if he did not know the Girondists and the Piangists who were in power one after another. Thinking of this, and Ning could not help but whistle, and he was in a very good mood. In the next few days, and Ning lived a very comfortable life. Christina dragged him to show his face in the salons of noble ladies everywhere, and told about his heroic deeds of killing the dueling king of Paris. When Christina did not look for him, and Ning went to the Britannia Club to brag with the future Jacobin boss. After a few days, and Ning got to know everyone in the Jacobins. Not only that, he even knew Lafayette of the Piangists. At that time, this guy criticized several generals on the front line for fighting badly, and Ning decisively went up to agree with him as an eyewitness. He originally thought that this would improve Lafayette's favorability, but Lafayette glared at him with a disgusted expression, as if he was very dissatisfied with this sudden interruption. The next Monday, and Ning wanted to go out again, but when he arrived at the door, he saw a super luxurious four-wheeled carriage pulled by 6 horses slowly approaching. Even on the streets of Paris, luxury carriages with 6 horses are very rare. The carriages of the dignitaries in Paris only have 4 horses at most. Because of this, and Ning stopped to watch, wanting to see who was so grand. At this time, Fanny leaned close to Ning's ear and whispered, "The emblem on the carriage is the emblem of Marcus Licher." And Ning frowned. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Reginald wears this emblem all day. I think it's hard for me not to remember it." And Ning was shocked. He thought about it and made a decisive decision. Let's go to the main house to take a look. As a guest of the Duke of Orleans, he can visit the main building of the royal palace without notifying, but he has to ask for permission if he wants to see the Duke. "Fanny, do you want me to send someone to deliver a letter to Mr. Robespierre?" "Don't be nervous. This is not a lawsuit, and Ning waved his hand. We are just going to meet the Marcus. Fanny frowned. Are you sure you are not going to provoke him? And Ning, maybe we can forget our grudges by smiling when we meet each other. As soon as he said this, he found that his translation golden finger had translated meet and forget our grudges by smiling into the corresponding Latin proverb. Fanny frowned. You just said Latin. No, it's just the slang in our hometown. And Ning denied it immediately. The son of a leather worker can't speak Latin. Fanny stared at Ning suspiciously. And Ning pretended not to see Fanny's expression and strode towards the main house. As soon as he entered the main house, Ning saw an elderly butler saying to the waiter of the Duke's mansion, "Please tell His Excellency the Duke that Marcus Licia is visiting you without permission." Behind the elderly butler stood an old noble with a stern face. The old nobleman's face was covered with age spots, as modeled as an ancient city wall, and there was a large pimple on the left side of his Jingming acupoint. Ning and the old nobleman made eye contact. The old man suddenly spoke, "You look like a commoner, but you can enter and leave the Duke's mansion at will, and the maid of the Duke's mansion is following you. I boldly speculate that you are the Duke's retainer, the son of the cobbler who killed my son, right?" Ning was not polite and nodded directly, "You are right, it's me." The old man stared at Ning, looked at him from head to toe, and then shook his head gently. "No, your hands are obviously not those of a swordsman. I don't believe a guy like you can defeat my son. There must be something fishy about this." Ning, "Then sue me." "Humph, I have long found a great lawyer like Robespierre." The old man sneered, "Humph, do you think I don't know? You common people have been clamoring for equality and enlightenment recently, but you ended up fooling His Majesty the Emperor. The court is on the side of you pigs." "Damn court, it actually rejected the decision of His Majesty the King. I can't even imagine what else they dare not do. So, no, I don't trust the court, the judge, or those lawyers. We country nobles have a better way to deal with this matter. A way that is more in line with aristocratic tradition. Come on." The young man who had been behind the old man immediately stepped forward upon hearing this, solemnly took out a handkerchief from his pocket, and swung it at Ning's face. Ning turned his head and dodged. With this reaction speed, Ning couldn't tell for a moment whether this dodge was the result of the plug-in or his own subconscious action. Anyway, he dodged. The old man was so angry that he hit the ground with his cane. "Don't hide. Are you still a man? Forget it, whether I hit it or not, the challenge has been issued. This is my son's swordsmanship teacher and my loyal servant. His family has served our family for generations and witnessed a long-standing aristocratic tradition. Whether you use evil tricks or some other means to defeat my son, you will definitely not win this time." Ning carefully looked at the person who threw the glove, looking at his full muscles that bulged up his clothes. "Good man, it feels like this guy can break the slender sword with his tense muscles." The old man looked at Ning with pride. "You can go to that world and accompany my son." Chapter 30, Strengths and Weaknesses. Ning had not expected this development. He fully expected that the Marcus would sue him when he came, and he and Robespierre had imagined a lot of possible situations and were prepared to deal with them. Ning had always felt that the Marcus might make a fuss about the gunshots at the scene, and Robespierre thought so too. He did not expect that they would directly duel again. Simple and rough. This caught Ning off guard. To be honest, in the duel with Reginald, Ning was almost killed by a sword, and he did not want to duel with a teacher who was older than Reginald at all. Who knows if Ning's external blocking counterattack will be broken by a real swordsmanship master. After all, when dueling with Reginald, Reginald's sword broke through Ning's defense and wiped Ning's neck, which shows that this fighting counterattack is not omnipotent. Dueling with a muscular man in front of you is very dangerous. Ning wanted to just raise his hands and surrender. After all, duels are not mandatory. If he didn't accept it, he would only be laughed at, and he would only lose the false reputation he had just gained through the duel. But just when Ning was about to refuse the duel, he suddenly noticed that Marcus Licia was staring at him with a murderous look. Ning suddenly realized that if he refused the duel, he would not get peace. Maybe this old man would use assassination. Although assassination is illegal, whether the Marcus would care about breaking the law is worth discussing. Ning couldn't help but think of the rumors Mirabeau had told him. Marcus Licia was called a devil by the people in his territory. He once hung up his serfs and beat them until they were disabled, and then refused the court's request for compensation, believing that the peasants were his private property and slaves, and he had the power of life and death. Such a guy should not take the life of a civilian seriously at all. If they duel, the danger is still out in the open. If they refuse the duel, then who knows where the danger will suddenly emerge from. In comparison, it is better to duel. But if they duel, they'll really have no confidence in winning. Marcus Lee's heir, why? The person who decisively challenged my son does not accept my challenge? As expected, there is something fishy about your victory. Don't think that if you don't accept the duel today, things will end like this. I will never let my son die in vain. It seems that if they don't accept the challenge, things will become very troublesome. And Ning doesn't want to worry about being attacked all day long. It's the lesser of two evils. As expected, they can only accept the duel. As for whether they can beat the other party. At this time, the strong man who threw the glove suddenly said, "It's normal for you to be afraid. I have won 14 duels. In the province where the Marquis's territory is located, no one can beat me in a duel." And Ning was shocked. Although the enemy is so arrogant, he can bet that the other party will underestimate him, but, as expected, this guy is not easy to deal with. It was too risky to compete with the opponent in swordsmanship. If I were to duel with a pistol, I might have a higher chance of winning by relying on my FPS plugin. After a brief thought, Ning made a decision. Ning, excuse me, may I ask your name? The burly man raised his chin. Edward Alice, my family has been the knights and personal bodyguards of the Marquis for generations. What, you decided to accept the duel? Ning, yes, I accept. According to general rules, as the challenged party, I have the right to choose the weapon for the duel. I choose to use a pistol for the duel. Edward Alice's expression froze. What? Ning repeated his words again. I choose to use a pistol for the duel. He paused, and asked back in a provocative tone, you don't know how to use a pistol, do you? Edward Alice smiled. Of course I know how to use a pistol. But don't you know how bad the accuracy of that thing is? It's not right to leave the victory or defeat to luck. Ning, have you been to the battlefield? On the battlefield, whether you can survive generally depends on luck. If you are lucky, bullets and shells will go around you. I have returned from that kind of hell. I think I should be lucky. Edward Alice turned his head to look at Marcus Leecia. The Marquis, you are also a noble, although only a knight. If a commoner is not afraid, then neither should you. It's decided. Pistol. Ning, very good. How about tomorrow as the date for the duel? I will find my own witness. At this moment, the Duke appeared in the hall, so Ning looked at the Duke directly and said, as for the third-party witness, how about asking Your Excellency the Duke to be the third-party witness? The Marquis flatly refused. No. You are the Duke's retainer, and it is not appropriate for him to be the third-party witness. I will ask a trustworthy bishop to be the third-party witness, just like the day you dueled with my son. Ning, okay. Marcus Litchell stared at Ning and said word by word, then tomorrow afternoon, at the place where my son died, my knight will fight you to the death. The Duke of Orleans interrupted at this time. Wait a minute, what's going on? Why is there a duel all of a sudden? Can you tell me the cause and effect? The Duke obviously received the news of the Marquis' visit, and ran out in a hurry without grasping the situation. Ning bent down and picked up the glove that Edward Alice had just thrown at his face and showed it to the Duke. Your Excellency the Duke of Telestal, this Edward Alice just threw this glove at me, intending to avenge his master's son. The Duke frowned. Marcus, your son died in a formal duel. If you have any objections to the result of the duel, you should file a complaint with the court. Marcus Leecia interrupted the Duke. Your Excellency the Duke. I don't trust the things that the common people have messed up. What courts, what lawyers, they are all conspiracies of the common people. We country nobles naturally have our own way of dealing with things. The Duke was amazed. Okay, since Andy has agreed to the duel, I have no objection. But you must accept the result of this duel. If Andy wins, you will take your son's body and leave honestly. The Marquis bowed to the Duke. Of course, if he can win, I will naturally leave. I just can't accept that my son who is proficient in swordsmanship was killed by the son of a leatherworker. Of course, if Mr. Frost can win the duel with a sword instead of a pistol, I will be more convinced. Ning, but I refuse. Last time I provoked a duel on impulse, and I almost got killed by a sword. I only won by luck. In this case, it is enough for me to prove my good luck, isn't it? The Marquis had a stern face. What you said does make sense, then let me see if you are really so lucky. After that, the Marquis just bowed slightly to the Duke, and then walked away arrogantly. The Duke was amazed. I am the Duke, shouldn't he respect me more? Chapter 31 Chameleon Talleyrand. And Ning looked at His Excellency the Duke, and suddenly realized that this was a good opportunity to pull the Duke in as a backer, so she said, "Your Excellency the Duke, I wonder if you are willing to be a witness on my side? After all, this duel was initiated under your nose." The Duke thought about it and nodded. "That makes sense, and everyone regards you as my follower. It is reasonable for me to be the witness. But why don't you choose the sword?" "And Ning, I almost died in the last sword fight. It was really very dangerous. This guy's swordsmanship is better than Reginald. I can't take the risk." The Duke stared at Ning. "What? Aren't you proficient in swordsmanship? Christina said that you suppressed Reginald with your wonderful swordsmanship." And Ning shook his head and said, "No, that's Christina's misunderstanding. It's actually very dangerous. So you chose a pistol this time, but isn't this a bit too much based on luck?" The Duke looked at Ning with a worried look on his face. "As far as I know, a duel with a pistol is rarely decided by one shot. Both parties stand face to face and load the pistol. The competition is about who is lucky enough to hit the other person first. In order to increase the chance of hitting the enemy, both parties load the pistol desperately in the hope of firing more shots, but in essence it is still a competition of luck." And Ning said, "Oh." If the Duke hadn't told him, he wouldn't have known that a pistol duel was like this. The scene of two people standing face to face and loading pistol bullets is quite silly. "And Ning, do the two people have to stand at a fixed distance in a duel?" The Duke shook his head. "No, there is no rule for this, so some people try to rush up and fire at close range to win, but those who do this are usually shot before they get close enough to hit the target." And Ning raised his eyebrows. At this time, a winning idea took shape in his mind. After he got the gun, a crosshair would appear in his field of vision, and the crosshair would show the range of the bullets. As long as he got close enough to the distance where the crosshair was almost locked on the opponent's body and then fired, he could ensure that he would hit the target. He only needed to get a little closer, not very close to the enemy. The Duke, "Well, I will provide you with a more accurate pistol, but the Marquis will probably buy the best pistol from the best craftsman in Paris. I think you should not have such an illusion if you want to win by the accuracy of the pistol." And Ning, "I don't have such an illusion, but I will win this duel." The Duke nodded, and then said earnestly, "If you die, Christina will be sad." And Ning smiled. "No, I still have to accompany her to the military school in Brienne." The next day, and Ning took the Duke's carriage to the duel scene. In addition to the Duke, Christina was also in the car. Christina glared at Ning, pouted her lips unhappily and said, "Why do you want to duel with him? Just refuse if you think you can't win." And Ning shook her head. "If I refuse to duel, His Excellency the Marquis will not let it go. You don't want me to be stabbed to death by someone who suddenly rushes out on the street, do you?" Christina frowned. "How is that possible? The security in Paris is not bad. If they do such a thing on the street, the Paris police will not let them go." And Ning was about to speak, but His Excellency the Duke said, "That Edward Alice is the Marquis's knight. These country nobles value this kind of master-servant relationship in the past. Maybe he is really willing to sacrifice his life or even his life to avenge the young master." Christina was silent. The Duke added, "So I personally admire Andy's decision very much. His approach is both wise and courageous." Christina, "But he is in danger now. Why not use a sword duel? Isn't a pistol all about luck?" And Ning looked at Christina seriously. "I will lose if I use a sword. I really don't know swordsmanship." "You are lying. I saw it clearly last time. You turned your wrist and deflected Reginald's sword. You must be proficient in swordsmanship." And Ning thought that it was true just by looking at the moment when the sword was deflected, because that step was done by the plugin. "Why didn't you look at my attack later? An expert would know that I am a layman as soon as he saw that attack." But he couldn't explain this to Christina, so he had to say, "Don't worry, I also have a trick to win with a pistol. It's not just leaving the victory to luck." Christina insisted, "How to win? I can use a pistol. I know that it depends more on luck to hit the person. Don't worry, just wait for me to come back victorious." And Ning could only say this. The Duke also said, "Just believe Andy. Anyway, no matter what you say, he can't change the fact that he is going to duel with a pistol. It's better to spend more time praying that he can win." Christina sighed and looked at Ning. "I'm waiting for you to go to Brienne together. You must come back victorious. Leave it to me." And Ning paused and added, "I really have a secret to win. You will see later." "Christina, you'd better have it." The carriage arrived outside the forest where the duel last time, and Ning got off first. This time, there were more people gathered outside than last time, and most of them were nobles. As soon as Ning got off the car, someone shouted, "Look, the son of the leatherworker is here in the Duke's carriage. He is indeed a guest of the Duke. I heard that he is the Duke's illegitimate son, but he was fostered in the leatherworker's home and scene, so he received the best education, and the swordsmanship was taught by a famous master himself." And Ning couldn't help but frown. What the hell? These nobles are so unwilling to believe that the son of a leatherworker defeated the son of the Marquis? The Duke also got out of the car. He probably heard the gossips of the people around him. He laughed and patted Ning on the shoulder. "You have become my illegitimate child. Ning, don't make fun of me." At this time, the Marquis and his knight Edward Alex were already waiting not far away. At this time, the two led an officer and a priest to this side. The Marquis introduced to the Duke, "This officer is our witness Colonel Arson, and this priest is the abbot of St. Remy Abbey, Monsieur Talleyrand, who is recommended by the cardinal." And Ning heard Talleyrand's name and couldn't help but look at him a few more times. Talleyrand was a famous chameleon during the French Revolution and a fighter among the fence-sitters. This guy was obviously a priest, but during the revolution, he sided with the Third Estate and suggested that the National Convention confiscate church property. He was simply rebellious. Talleyrand bowed slightly to the Duke, then asked Ning in confusion, "I don't see Mr. Francois' witness." "Ning, first of all, my last name is Frost, and secondly, my witness is His Excellency the Duke of Tillistal." Talleyrand said and rolled his eyes. Ning thought he was going to betray him on the spot. But Talleyrand did not do so, but said in a businesslike tone, "Then the witnesses of both parties are here, please check each other's weapons." Chapter 32, Winning from Behind. Ning pulled out a gun from his waist and handed it to the colonel. The colonel picked up the gun and curled his lips. "The gun of the famous gunsmith Loyalties is a good thing. This thing has a 2/3 chance of hitting someone when fired at the dual distance." "Only a 2/3 chance? Wait, it's actually 2/3? So the hit rate seems to be okay?" The colonel looked at Ning's expression and smiled. "You don't think that a pistol duel is about firing blanks at each other?" "No, in fact, most of the time, the first shot will hit each other, but it's not fatal. A pistol duel is about who can endure the pain of being shot and complete the reload as quickly as possible. Generally, a pistol duel requires 3 shots to determine the winner, and the winner will also have 1 or 2 holes in his body bleeding. So a pistol duel is much uglier than a sword fight, and both the winner and the loser are very embarrassed." And Ning half opened his mouth. To be honest, he really didn't think a pistol duel would be like this. If what the colonel said was true, wouldn't a pistol duel be about who has a thicker health bar? Then I have a great advantage. After all, I am a tough guy who can bounce bullets off my head. The colonel returned the pistol to Ning, and then said to Talleyrand, "I checked the pistol, it's fine." Then Edward Alex took out his own gun and handed it to the Duke of Tillistal. "The Duke, can I let my servant check it? I personally don't know anything about pistols." Talleyrand nodded, "Of course, as long as the inspection is done in front of everyone." So the Duke snapped his fingers, and the groom who brought Ning to the venue immediately stepped forward, took the pistol from the Duke's hand, and examined it carefully. After a while, the groom said to the Duke, "There is no problem with the gun." Christina, who came over for some reason, said, "Is it not appropriate to let the groom check it?" The groom said to his daughter, "Although I am a groom, I am also the guard of the Duke. I am familiar with all kinds of firearms." The Duke explained to his daughter, "This man is from Switzerland and once served the royal family as a mercenary." And Ning raised her eyebrows. The Duke of Orleans always wanted Louis XVI to abdicate and replace him, but Ning did not expect that the Duke's guards were Swiss mercenaries like the French emperor. Talleyrand said to Christina, "Miss Duke, please go to the parasol and join the ladies. This is a duel with pistols. You can't get too close, otherwise you may be injured by mistake." "Christina, I'm just going over there." After that, she held Ning's hand. "You must win. I'm waiting to go to Brienne Military Academy with you." After that, Christina let go of her hand and turned to walk towards the noble ladies. There were already several groups of noble ladies gathered nearby. The servants opened large parasols and laid out picnic mats on the ground. The picnic boxes were also opened, showing the exquisite refreshments brought by the servants of each family. Edward Alex looked at Christina, who was going away, and suddenly said, "The ladies are here for a picnic, but we have to perform a bloody fight with pistols. You really should choose a sword, so that I can kill you cleanly and neatly, and even less blood will be shed. And Ning immediately retorted, "It won't be too bloody with a pistol, because it will be over soon." "Maybe." Edward shrugged. "Then can we start?" "Talleyrand, the weapons have been checked. Please keep a distance of 15 fathoms. The fathom here is one of the distance units in France at this time. The iron ruler that stipulates the length of 1 fathom is embedded on the wall of the Châtelet Court in Paris. At this time, the French measurement was very chaotic. For example, there were several length standards popular in France, including the imperial foot, feet, fathoms, not fathoms, steps, etc. Because the measurement system was so chaotic, the National Convention of Paris later decided to establish a new, unified, decimal measurement system. This is the origin of the metric meter. Ning and Edward moved apart, and Talleyrand instructed 2 followers to hold a 15-fathom-long rope and carefully measure the distance between the two. After confirming that the distance between the two met the regulations, Talleyrand raised one hand and said, "You two, start loading, but you can't raise your guns, let alone fire." Ning immediately pulled out his pistol and started loading. To load a flintlock rifle now, you need to first take out a pre-made paper-wrapped bullet, tear a hole, pour the gunpowder and the bullet into the barrel, and then roll the paper into a ball and stuff it in from the muzzle, and press it tightly with a cleaning rod. After completing these loading steps, you also need to take out the horn guard filled with gunpowder and pour a little gunpowder into the ignition pool outside the gun. In this way, when the trigger is pulled, the sparks from the flint will fall into the powder pool, ignite the gunpowder in the powder pool, and then ignite the gunpowder in the gun through the hole between the powder pool and the gun chamber. Ning tore open the pre-made medicine bag and found that the bullet given to him by the Duke was not a whole bullet, but a large bullet with several small ones. In this way, even if the large bullet did not hit, the small bullet might hit, which can greatly increase the hit rate. It is said that in this era, the armies of some countries have a rigid regulation that when loading, they must load this kind of shotgun with a large number of large and small bullets to improve the killing efficiency. The British lobster soldiers across the sea are determined not to do this evil way and only load 1 bullet, because the British believe that at the general combat distance of line infantry, this kind of small bullet stuffed in has no power at all, and it doesn't hurt to hit people. But Ning is only 15 fathoms away from Edward now, and the small bullet at this distance is also enough to kill. And during the loading process, Ning obtained another information: he loads faster than the opponent. If you think about it carefully, this is normal. After all, he has a system, and this loading is probably also under the control of the system. The evidence is that Ning didn't pay much attention to reloading, and her body completed the reloading as if completing a muscle memory action. Ning was a military musician in the army, and had never received any training in handling a gun, so it was impossible for her to form such muscle memory. Seeing that both of them had finished reloading, Talleyrand said, "I, Charles Maurice Talleyrand, the abbot of the Abbey of St. Remy, declare the duel between Edward Alex and Andy Frost officially started. Both of you raise your guns." Ning and Edward raised their guns together. As Ning raised the gun, the crosshairs appeared. At this distance, Ning found that the crosshairs was a circle larger than Edward's entire body. Looking at the spread of the crosshairs, it is impossible to have a 2/3 hit rate. 1/3 is more like it. Talleyrand took a step back and motioned the 2 witnesses to step back together. After everyone retreated a sufficient distance, Talleyrand shouted, "Fire!" Edward pulled the trigger directly, and the flint struck a spark to ignite the powder pool. The pistol spewed out a large cloud of white smoke, accompanied by a crisp gunshot. Ning felt his shoulder tremble, probably because he was shot. But because of the large amount of adrenaline secreted, he did not feel any pain. Ning did not fire, but raised his gun and walked forward. As he gradually approached the enemy, the crosshairs gradually overlapped with the enemy's outline. Edward was blocked by the smoke produced by the shooting and did not notice that he was approaching quickly. He was busy loading his musket with his head down. The onlooker Marcus Lecia shouted, "Foul! He is fouling. How can he close the distance?" Talleyrand, the rule in Paris is that both parties must keep a distance of 15 fathoms at the beginning. There is no rule that you cannot get close to the enemy. In fact, some people rushed to the front and tried to shoot in the face during a pistol duel. Ning was already close to 10 fathoms at this time. It felt like the enemy's outline should have filled the entire crosshairs. That is to say, firing at this time will definitely hit the enemy. But at this time, the white smoke produced by the enemy's firing had completely spread, and Ning could not even see the enemy's feet. Ning decided to wait. The enemy will definitely move and bypass the white smoke between the two of them. This is the moment Ning was waiting for. Finally, Edward's figure emerged from the white smoke. The moment he saw Ning, he immediately raised his gun and aimed, but Ning was faster. After all, there was a ready-made sight. Ning put the sight on Edward's upper body and fired directly. A large bullet and several small bullets loaded in the barrel immediately hit Edward's upper body. Unfortunately, Ning was blocked by the white smoke from the firing and had no way to observe the effect of the shooting. He did one thing: he moved to the side. The sound of enemy gunfire came. Ning did not feel that he was shot. In fact, under the influence of a large amount of adrenaline, he even forgot that he had just been shot on the shoulder. He reloaded the pistol skillfully and continued to move to avoid the white mist produced by the shooting. He saw Edward, who was also reloading bullets. Not only that, he also saw that the other party's reloading became obviously unskilled because of his injuries. The previous shot was obviously very effective. Ning pulled the cleaning rod out of the barrel and threw it away directly. In this way, he had no way to load the next bullet, but this greatly shortened the reloading time. He was ready to decide the outcome with this one shot. He raised his gun and locked the crosshairs on the enemy. Because the distance was shortened again, this time the crosshairs only covered the enemy's chest. There was no possibility of being shot away. Ning opened fire. His vision was once again blocked by white smoke. But the next second, Ning heard the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, and then the crisp sound of the enemy's cleaning rod hitting the ground. The gun that the enemy was loading fell. Then, there was the sound of a heavier object hitting the ground. Then, Talleyrand's voice came: "The winner is decided. The one who is still standing is Andy Frost." Christina screamed. Ning breathed a sigh of relief, and only then did he feel a little pain in his shoulder. He lowered his head and found that his entire left shoulder was already bloodshot. At this time, the Marquis literally roared, "No! Are you blind? He violated the rules. The damned cobbler's son violated the rules." The Marquis literally rushed up, grabbed the collar of Talleyrand's priest's robe, and roared hysterically, "You must have been bribed by the Duke. Talleyrand, how is it possible? I only knew that I had to be a witness last night. I don't believe it. I understand, these are all conspiracies of the Duke, but we country nobles will not give up so easily." As he said this, the Marquis literally pulled out the colonel's pistol beside him, took the gunpowder barrel and poured gunpowder into the powder pool. As a result, the bullet in the gun rolled out of the muzzle. "Colonel, Your Excellency the Marquis, you can't raise the gun so hard, or the bullet will be thrown out. Raise the gun gently." The Marquis didn't seem to hear the colonel's words at all, nor did he notice that the bullet had been thrown out. He aimed at Ning and pulled the trigger. After the gun went off, Ning was fine. After all, the bullet had slipped away. "Ning, everyone, you saw it. I am going to sue Marquis Lee Zaire. He tried to murder me." Ning had spent so much energy to hire a great lawyer. Wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't choose it? Chapter 33 suddenly turned into a duel. Marquis Richard stared at Ning with gritted teeth. "A commoner like you can be killed in my territory, so be it. The most I need to do is apologize to the Lord of Scene because I killed his serf. Ning, first of all, my family is a shoemaker in the city, not a serf anymore. Secondly, times have changed now. Even if they are serfs, you can't kill them casually." Marquis Richard sneered, "You're dreaming. You are bewitched by Rousseau's fallacies. Our France will always be the France of His Majesty the King. Do you, a bunch of peasants, still want to be the masters of the country?" Ning turned her head and looked at Duke Tristel. The Duke was also a supporter of Rousseau and Voltaire. At this time, he frowned and said to the Marquis, "Times have changed. Now even if His Majesty the King wants to send someone to the gallows, he has to go through the Supreme Court of Paris. You just shot Frost, which was indeed attempted murder. He has the right to sue you." Marquis Richard was stunned. He stared at the Duke. "Your Excellency the Duke, are you standing on the side of this civilian? He is just a cobbler." The Duke shrugged. "I stand on the side of the law. What I saw was that you pulled out a gun and tried to murder him. If I am required to testify in court, I will." Marquis Richard was silenced by the Duke's words. He probably did not expect that the Duke would really stand on the side of the civilians. At this time, the third-party witness Talleyrand also spoke up. "This is Paris. Many things are different from your own territory. I suggest you apologize to Mr. Frost in exchange for his forgiveness." Anyway, the bullet from your gun just now was not really fired. And Ning, I don't forgive, don't you understand? He may send someone to kill me at any time. I need the protection of the law. Talleyrand curled his lips. Then what do you want? Send him to the Bastille? This is unrealistic. And Ning thought about it and suddenly felt that it made sense. Now it was just an attempted murder, and it was unlikely that the Marquis would really be sent to prison. At most, he would pay some money. Then the most reliable way is to duel, kill the Marquis, and eliminate the trouble directly. And Ning looked down at his hands. Now he was not wearing gloves, so he couldn't throw the gloves immediately. Unexpectedly, the Marquis took off his gloves and threw them directly on Ning's face. The law is really unreliable. Now the witnesses of the three parties are here. I want to duel. Choose a weapon. And Ning smiled. That's right. I choose a pistol as my weapon. And Ning said loudly. Actually, he was going to choose a long sword at first, so that he could bully the Marquis because he was old. But then he thought that although the Marquis was old, he might have received sword training, so a pistol would be better. The Marquis's hands were shaking when he took the gun just now, and he might not be able to hit the target. Talleyrand glanced at the witnesses on both sides and said tentatively, then, shall we continue now? The witnesses are here. Duke Telestal glanced at Ning and said, your shoulder is injured. You should suggest to recover from the injury before coming back. And Ning then remembered that he was shot on the shoulder. He was used to the pain and forgot it. As soon as the Duke reminded him, and Ning's shoulder hurt sharply. Marquis Litchell shouted, he has agreed to the duel and cannot change his mind. Talleyrand, Mr. Frost, are you okay? Can you fire? Marquis Litchell interrupted Talleyrand, of course he can fire, he was shot after the first shot, and then he completed the entire duel process. And according to the rules of the duel, after choosing the weapon, I should choose the time of the duel. I choose now, immediately. And Ning moved his arm and felt that although his arm was painful, it did not seem to affect his operation of the gun. Maybe this was in Ning's FPS system at work. Seriously injured soldiers in the game could still reload and shoot, and their accuracy was not affected. So Ning decided to solve the problem once and for all today, so he said to Talleyrand, just do as he says, and the duel continues. Talleyrand raised his voice and said to the people watching around him, now, things have made new progress. Marcus Richard is dissatisfied with the result of the duel and decided to fight himself. Mr. Andy Frost has accepted the duel, and his weapon of choice is still a pistol. As soon as the words fell, and Ning heard Christina's voice from the audience, no. He is already injured, this is not fair. I mean Andy is already injured. Talleyrand glanced at Ning's shoulder and said, you can bandage it. Is there a doctor on the scene? And Ning waved his hand, no need to trouble the doctor. Is there any wine on the scene? Just give me some wine. Doctors of this era are not trustworthy. They have no concept of disinfection at all, and they even think that festering wounds are getting better. Talleyrand shouted to the crowd, who has wine? Bring a bottle. Immediately, a young gentleman came running over with a bottle of whiskey. I have wine here, you can drink it, brother. This man thought Ning wanted to drink the wine himself. And Ning took off his coat and exposed his upper body, then took the bottle and poured it on his shoulder. The sting and pain made his whole face twisted. Christina ran over and held Ning's arm with both hands. What are you doing? You need a doctor. And Ning shook his head. No, this is enough. After washing the wound, Ning felt that the pain was relieved a lot. He didn't know whether it was a psychological effect or the effect of his plug-in was enhanced after washing the wound with alcohol. The Duke grabbed Christina and said, he is an adult and knows what he is doing. You just wait and congratulate him. After that, the Duke handed Christina to the servant who came forward, and then personally took the bandage handed over by the servant, bandaged Ning, and turned to Talleyrand and signaled, we are ready here. Talleyrand nodded, and after confirming that the Marquis was also ready, he raised his hand and said, both sides should keep a distance of 15 fathoms. The Marquis took a pistol and stood where his guard had just fallen. By the way, the Marquis's servant had just carried the guard Edward down, and the blood on the ground had not been cleaned up in time. And Ning also came to the place where he had just stood. He found that there was only a little blood on the ground, which should be when he was shot. The moment he saw the blood, and Ning's shoulder hurt again. But this did not prevent him from completing the reloading of the pistol smoothly. Talleyrand raised his right hand high, ready. Both sides reload. Because the Marquis's hands were shaking, he reloaded much slower than Ning. The whole venue was temporarily quiet because they had to wait for the Marcus to reload. And Ning had time to glance at Christina and found that her face was tense and worried. The noble ladies around her were trying to comfort her. Finally, the Marcus finished reloading and raised his gun tremblingly. Seeing this, Talleyrand raised his right hand and chopped it down. Start. After Talleyrand gave the order, the Marcus immediately walked towards Ning with his gun raised. It seems that he is ready to fire the first shot at his face. And Ning was happy, thinking, how could you succeed? I can see the crosshairs here. In other words, I know what distance can ensure a certain hit. So Ning stood there waiting for the Marcus to take the bait, and fired directly when the crosshairs completely covered the Marcus. He did not forget to step to the side at the moment of firing. The moment he stepped, the Marcus also fired. And Ning didn't feel like he was shot at all. He didn't dare to neglect it and immediately started to reload. With the Marquis's reloading speed, he would definitely fire the second shot. It can be said that he has already won this duel. Then he heard the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. And Ning turned his head to look at Talleyrand. Talleyrand ran up quickly and squatted down to check something. And Ning couldn't see what was going on because of the smoke, so he just stood there and continued to reload. In case the duel was not over, and Ning could shoot immediately. At this time Talleyrand said loudly, Marcus Richard is no longer breathing. Our Andy Frost has won the duel again. And Ning breathed a sigh of relief, and at this time he heard someone in the audience say, fuck, so he killed the Marcus and his son? The son of a shoemaker actually killed 2 nobles. Oh, what's the matter? Hundreds of noble young masters die in Paris every year, all in duels. With Reginald's character of picking trouble all the time, he will die in a duel sooner or later. At this time the Duke also came over and patted Ning on the shoulder. Great, now the trouble is completely solved. Anyone who dares to question this duel is against me. And Ning raised his eyebrows. Do you also think the Marcus is a trouble? The Duke shrugged. He has written to his son to propose marriage more than once. If you hadn't killed his son, he would probably propose marriage again when he came to Paris this time. This kind of country noble is a bit. The Duke shrugged before making that comment. He's a bit stubborn. Even if I told him that Christina was going to the Brienne Military Academy, he wouldn't let it go. And Ning raised his eyebrows. Then I have helped you solve your problem this time. Yes, you can say that. It's because of this that I agreed to be a witness for you. I'm the Duke and I won't show up easily. Talleyrand also came over from the Marquis's body at this time and said to the Duke with a smile, Then your Excellency the Duke witnessed the Marquis's death. Oh, Abbot, don't talk as if I hope the Marquis will die. The Duke spread his hands. I can only say that I'm sorry for the Marquis's death, but there will be casualties in a duel, and bullets are ruthless. And Ning echoed seriously, Yes, bullets are ruthless. I can only say that the Marcus thought my injury was a good opportunity, but things didn't go as he wished. Talleyrand looked at Ning's shoulder. Are you okay? If you ask me, you are the toughest young man I have ever met. You won 2 duels with gunshot wounds. It's amazing. The Duke, that's why I'm optimistic about him. It was with his bravery that he saved my daughter from the battlefield. Really? That's right. Talleyrand nodded repeatedly. Although he is the son of a leatherworker, he behaves as bravely as a real nobleman. It's not easy. And Ning, this fully demonstrates the quality of a person. It has nothing to do with his background, Your Excellency the Dean. Indeed. At this time, Christina ran up and gave Ning a tight hug. Andy, you won again. The Duke, oh my God, Christina, be gentle, he is still injured. And Ning, it doesn't matter, Your Excellency the Duke, the lady's hug is a reward, covering all the pain. But Christina immediately pulled away. Sorry, I forgot you. Does it still hurt? As she said that, she gently stroked the bandage on Ning's shoulder. If you wipe it, I won't feel any pain. And Ning said. Christina giggled. At this time, Mirabeau popped up. That's great. Now you have also won 3 duels. You have achieved the achievement that Reginald boasted about before. And Ning, and I won the 3rd game with an injury. Yes, I won the 3rd game with an injury. Tomorrow I will write about your story in the newspaper. The title will be, It Will Be. Mirabeau pressed his hand on his forehead. Let me think about it, it will be. And Ning, how about the brave legend of a cobbler? Mirabeau, do I have to emphasize the cobbler? That's right, emphasizing that you are the son of a cobbler will create a contrast. Yes, it will be called The Legend of the Cobbler's Son. At this time, someone shouted Andy's name. and Ning turned around and found that it was Robespierre, Danton and others. It turned out that everyone from the Brittany Club was here too. Danton came up and gave Ning a hug. Great. Now one of our civilians has won 3 duels. Robespierre, I was ready to help you sue the Marquis. I planned to do everything I could to send the Marquis to prison. Now you sent him to heaven. And Ning, no, the Marquis is such an extreme person, he can't go to heaven, I should send him to hell. Robespierre was a little confused. Hell. Danton explained, the Marquis has a bad reputation. It is said that he often beats his serfs. When he was young, he once demanded the right of the first night. Robespierre frowned. Right of the first night? How is that possible? He will be sued. Danton, not every place has lawyers and judges like your father who are willing to help civilians sue. In fact, in many places, the Marquis still has great authority. And Ning nodded. Indeed, after the outbreak of the Great Revolution, the peasants in Vendée and other places could not accept the Republic. In addition, after the Revolution, the National Convention passed the Priest Oath Act, which cracked down on traditional Catholic forces everywhere and drove away the good priests in the eyes of the peasants. As a result, royalist rebellions broke out in underdeveloped areas such as the Vendée. Marquis Richard probably came from that remote, underdeveloped area. When the revolution breaks out in the future, a royalist rebellion might also break out in the Marquis's territory. But that's all for the future and has nothing to do with a Ning now. And Ning, shall we celebrate somewhere tonight? Your Excellency the Duke should come too. The Duke nodded. Let's have a celebration party at my house tonight. All of Andy's friends can come. Chapter 34 I can't stand the quack doctors of this era. The celebratory dinner was held at the Duke's palace. As a peasant who couldn't dance, and Ning basically ate by the dance floor. The snacks provided by the Duke's palace tasted quite good, which made Ning feast on her appetite. Robespierre didn't seem to want to dance either, so he ran to Ning and started chatting with her. And Ning first teased Robespierre's coat. Why are you still wearing this green coat? You should change into something more formal for the ball tonight. Even I borrowed a set of clothes from the Duke. And Ning bought a formal suit before, and wore it out for a duel today. As a result, he was shot on the shoulder and blood stained a large area, so he couldn't wear it anymore. And Ning only had this one formal suit, so she had to borrow one from the Duke. Robespierre shrugged his shoulders. I said, I only have this one coat. My tuition and living expenses come from the priest and heiress. I don't have that much spare money to buy a new formal suit. Besides, whether a person is decent or not mainly depends on his character, not his clothes. Even if I wear this old green suit, my character is still impeccable. That's because you are incorruptible. Of course it is impeccable. But now Robespierre does not have this nickname. Now his nickname is Roman. Robespierre glanced at the venue and said loudly, look at this venue. Even if it is the Duke's ball, there are not many nobles who are honored to come. This kind of ball is not by invitation. Even if you don't get an invitation, you can come if you want. Generally, there will be a lot of small nobles who want to curry favor with the Duke to come to the Duke's ball to make friends, but today, most of the guests in the entire venue are civilian gentlemen from the Brittany Club, and there are not many nobles. And Ning, maybe the nobles don't want to congratulate me, the son of a cobbler. Robespierre, I looked around, and the nobles who came today are basically liberal nobles who support Rousseau and Montesquieu. I seem to have seen the Marquis de Lafayette. And Ning, I saw him too. He came over to toast me with a glass of wine, and then went to talk to the Duke. After all, Lafayette had participated in the war in North America and witnessed the free people of the North American colonies rebelling against a king and establishing a Republican federation, so he didn't care much about the privileges of the nobility. Robespierre, if there were more nobles like the Marquis de Lafayette and the Duke of Tolstoy, our country would be better. Now some nobles are stupid and bad. Yes, and Ning agreed, how can these insects govern the country well? You're absolutely right. Danton also came over. You did a great job today. You directly vented the anger for us civilians. From today on, you are the dual king of Paris. Robespierre shook his head. Just killing a Marquis will not change anything. The nobles are still high above. I don't know when we can completely change this situation and realize a truly civilian society. And Ning thought to himself, don't worry, it's only 9 years away, and when it comes, it will be much more drastic than you imagined. While Ning was thinking secretly, Robespierre continued, I want to write a letter to His Excellency the Duke and ask him to go to His Majesty the King and explain the pros and cons, so that His Majesty the King can come forward to establish a civil society like the one in Britain. And Ning subconsciously retorted, impossible. His Majesty the King only thinks about how to mess with his locks and doesn't want to deal with these troublesome matters at all. Robespierre glared at Ning. How can you say that? Didn't your Majesty start a war with Prussia? The war may have been instigated by that Austrian princess, including the alliance with the Habsburgs. And Ning shrugged. In short, don't expect His Majesty the King to launch a top-down reform. He doesn't have that idea at all. He is just a locksmith. Don't ask for too much. Danton suddenly laughed. Andy, do you realize that it is a huge progress for you to be able to evaluate His Majesty in this way? In the era of Louis XIV, you would at least be caned for doing this. And Ning shrugged. After all, we are in the Duke of Orleans' base camp, and the Duke himself is the one who speaks the most bad about the royal family. Danton, that's true. So does His Excellency the Duke have any hope of becoming king? If he becomes king, he might be able to realize Maximilian's ideal of weakening the privileges of the nobility and establishing a civilian society. And Ning glanced at the Duke, who was talking with the Marquis de Lafayette in the distance. To be fair, the Duke was deeply influenced by the Enlightenment. If Louis XV really died of a serious illness and the underage prince succeeded to the throne, the Duke of Orleans might indeed become the regent of France, and he might implement a series of reforms at that time. But the problem is that the Great Revolution is coming. Instead of expecting the regent to implement reforms bit by bit, it is better to do it all at once, abolish the royal power, send the stubborn nobles to the street lamps and guillotines, and build a civil society from scratch. Danton, what do you think, Andy? My opinion is that now that social contradictions are so intense, France may not be able to wait for slow top-down reforms. And Ning paused. In fact, these duels between me and the Marquis, as well as the Marquis's son, can also be seen as a microcosm of the contradictions between the nobles and the common people, right? The nobles are unhappy with us and want to restore their past authority, but we stand up and say no. Danton and Robespierre looked at each other. Robespierre, it is indeed interesting. When I was at home, my father also dealt with the contradictions between the nobles and the common people. Danton, the Marquis's son Reginald often provokes the common people and finds faults in various ways. Right? So I feel that now that the contradictions are becoming increasingly acute, it only takes an opportunity, such as a natural disaster, a reduction in food production, and the common people can no longer survive, and the contradictions with the noble masters will always erupt. Danton, what you said is interesting. When will the natural disaster come? How should I know? It is better to ask God. And Ning shrugged. In fact, he knew that France had suffered a series of natural disasters in 1788, which led to a large reduction in grain production. In 1789, the price of bread soared, and people could hardly afford bread, so the call for changing the status quo was unprecedentedly high. It happened that Louis XV decided to convene the three-level parliament at this time, which was equivalent to concentrating the leaders of the people who were originally scattered all over the country to Paris. As a result, the hungry masses had a spokesperson and organizer. So the revolution broke out. Of course, it is too early to say this now. Ning does not want to be a charlatan who predicts a reduction in grain production, so this topic can only be stopped here. Mirabeau came over at this time. He was already drunk. He came over and patted Ning on the shoulder and said, I heard that you are going to attend Brienne Military School with the eldest lady this year. And Ning nodded. I have this plan. But I don't know when Brienne Military School will start. It's only a few days away. I guess you won't be able to go to school before your shoulder injury heals. Mirabeau said and patted Ning on the shoulder gently. You should let the Duke's doctor take a look. It will heal faster. And Ning shook his head repeatedly. He just didn't want the quack doctors of this era to touch his wound. It's okay. I'm very strong, and I can wash the wound with wine, which is enough. Mirabeau, you don't know how to judge whether this wound is getting better. You have to see if it is festering. If it is festering, it means it is getting better. And Ning wanted to hold his forehead. This is not Mirabeau's nonsense. Doctors of this era really thought so. But as a modern person, naturally know that this is wrong. And Ning, okay, don't worry, I recover really quickly, it's just a gunshot wound. Mirabeau shrugged, then changed his tone. By the way, I heard a new title for you from several nobles. They now call you the Noble Killer. And Ning, this title is quite cool, isn't it? Robespierre and Danton laughed together. Not handsome at all. Christina suddenly appeared angrily. You obviously saved me. It's unreasonable to call you a killer. And Ning, I only saved you, but I killed the Marquis and a count, although count is an honorary title. Mirabeau, in fact, the person who came up at the beginning of today was also a nobleman. Don't think of knights as nobles. And Ning, so I killed 3 nobles and saved you. It's normal for people to call me a killer. Christina looked at Ning worriedly. You don't understand how much influence this title has on you. For example, if you want to be promoted in the army in the future, it is absolutely impossible to have this title, because the senior officials of the army are all nobles. And Ning smiled, thinking to herself, you don't have to worry about this, because the revolution is coming. But he couldn't say that at this time, so he could only comfort Christina. After I go to Brienne Military Academy, I will take the entrance exam for the Paris Military Academy. When I graduate from the Paris Military Academy, not many people will remember this. You might as well worry more about the injury on my shoulder. Christina, how is your injury? Do you feel okay? I heard from the doctor that you need a fever to recover quickly. Do you have a fever? Doctors of this era did not know about microorganisms, nor did they know that fever after being injured was caused by wound infection. They just observed that many wounded had fevers and recovered after a while, so they thought that fever after being injured was a good thing. It was the same reason why they thought suppuration was a good thing. And Ning, I don't feel like I have a fever yet. That's too bad. How about I ask the maid to get you some hot water for a hot compress? Well, Christina was determined to let Ning have a fever. And Ning began to regret mentioning the injury on her shoulder. Don't worry, I will recover quickly, and I will be alive and kicking in no time. And Ning could only say this to Christina. But the girl still looked at him with worry, and suggested, why don't you get some lime to rub the wound, so that it will fester faster and heal faster? And Ning wanted to cover her face. Damn it, I should have traveled to an era where medicine is a little more reliable. Pastor, please come quickly, I can't stand the quack doctors of this era. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Recovery. In the next few days, Ning recovered much faster than expected. 3 days later, his shoulder no longer bled much, and there was no sign of suppuration. It looked like it would be completely healed in a week or 2. When Ning was recuperating, Marat came over once and strongly suggested that Ning get some lime to wipe it, because Marat thought that it was a bad sign if the wound did not suppurate, and it had to be allowed to suppurate. Ning rejected the request of the future friend of the people without hesitation. Marat seemed not very happy about this. Ning couldn't help but worry a little. After the outbreak of the Great Revolution in the future, he would not be sent to the guillotine by Marat because of this. He had to be careful with Marat in the future and not let him hold a grudge. 2 weeks later, Ning's shoulder injury was completely healed. That day, he invited all his friends from the Brittany Club to come over and held a small party at his home to celebrate. For this small party, Ning paid for a lot of fruits and snacks. Robespierre also came to the party wearing his never-changing green coat. At the party, he told Ning that he was going to return to Paris, where he might become a lawyer or judge. Ning knew the future history, so he knew that the next time he would see Robespierre in Paris would probably be when the 3-level parliament was convened. During this time, Robespierre would become a very respected lawyer in his hometown, laying the foundation for his later election as a representative of the Third Estate of the 3-level parliament with a high vote. So this small party naturally became a farewell party for Robespierre. Halfway through the farewell, the Duke and Christine also arrived. Robespierre joked, I never thought that a Duke would come to see off a commoner like me. The Duke responded with Rousseau's words, man is born free, but is often trapped in chains. He who thinks he is the master of all others is, in fact, a slave to all others. I don't want the Duke's title to become my shackles, just like. And Ning added, like the Marquis de Richel. The Duke smiled and said, yes, just like the Marquis de Richel, who was bound by the title and became a short-sighted person. I won't be like that. I would like to make friends with talented commoners like you, Maximilien. Robespierre nodded and said, you are really the most open-minded noble I have ever met. If all nobles are like you. And Ning joked, Then we will have a lot of dirty jokes about Her Majesty the Queen to read." The Duke laughed. It is an open secret that the Duke of Orleans funded the publication of those pamphlets that discredited the Queen. Christina complained, "Andy, I'm still here. How can I respond to this topic?" And Ning, "Sorry." The Duke waved his hand, and then said to his daughter, "My dear daughter, remember, when men get together, apart from talking about politics and military affairs, most of the rest are all kinds of dirty jokes. You have to get used to it." Christina rolled her eyes. At this time, Robespierre asked the Duke, "Speaking of which, I heard the news from the front today. Prussia won another battle." The Duke nodded. "Yes, this Frederick is really amazing. He led the army in person and defeated us, Austria and Russia in succession. Now it is said that the British troops have landed in Hanover and defended Frederick's rear. The outcome of the war depends on whether the French and Austrian coalition can defeat the British army." And Ning thought about it and vaguely remembered that in the 7 Years' War, the French and British armies lost more than they won. But he didn't remember that the Franco-Austrian coalition had fought against the British army on the European continent. Maybe this was a historical process unique to this time and space. Danton asked Ning with a little interest, "What do our war heroes think of the upcoming battle with the British army?" Ning had just been awarded the medal by Louis V at the Palace of Versailles with Christina a few days ago. Ning remembered that the Legion of Honor should have been established during the Napoleonic era, but this medal has existed for a long time in this time and space. It is said that when Queen Teresa established the Teresa Medal, Louis XVI thought that we should also have a medal to reward soldiers, so he established it. Now Danton called Ning, who had won the medal, a war hero. Of course, it was a joke. Everyone in the Brittany Club knew how Ning escaped from the battlefield and knew that this medal was picked up for nothing. But as a keyboard politics enthusiast and military fan, Ning would naturally not miss this opportunity to comment on the war, so he seriously answered Danton's question, "I think Britain will win. Because the British army is Ning almost said a bourgeois army. But at this time, the concept of bourgeoisie, no, the concept of class itself had not been born. So Ning could only say, "The British army is an army composed of citizens. It is different from the cannon fodder driven to the battlefield by the masters. The Red British Army can have high morale, mainly because the British established a new social order after the Glorious Revolution, and the British have a stronger sense of belonging to their country. So the British Army will have a stronger desire to fight and higher morale. It is very difficult for the army of the feudal dynasty to defeat such an army." Mirabeau listened to Ning's statement and immediately raised a rebuttal, "But we have also won many victories in the battle with Britain. The most recent one was 5 years ago in North America. We defeated the British Army and made the 13 colonies independent from British rule." And Ning, "I didn't say that the army of the feudal dynasty couldn't beat the citizen army, I just said it was difficult. In fact, I saw with my own eyes how the civilized people led by Frederick defeated our army on German soil. The morale of the British army may be higher than that of the Prussian army. I don't think General Carnegie can defeat the British army." Danton, "From what you said, do you think we have been left behind by Europe in social reform? Even the Prussian soldiers are called civilized people by you, while our soldiers are still simple subjects." And Ning asked in return, "Isn't it true? From the time of the Sun King to now, have we carried out any obvious social reforms? We are obviously the birthplace of various Enlightenment ideas, but we have not carried out any reforms. Our nobles still look down on the common people, our government is heavily in debt, and our queen is still squandering and debauching." The gentlemen present looked at each other, and no one could refute Ning. That's right, France, as the source of Enlightenment thought, gave birth to Enlightenment thinkers such as Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu, but the French king was very unenthusiastic about reform compared to other feudal monarchs in Europe. Queen Teresa of Austria, and King Frederick of Prussia, who were contemporaries of Louis XVI, both implemented a series of reform policies to ease domestic conflicts. Even Catherine of Russia pretended to accept the Enlightenment and implemented certain reforms. Only France, the source of the Enlightenment, remained completely silent. And Ning's words made all the French present fall into silence. Mirabeau sighed. "Alice, the previous Minister of Finance Necker did implement some reforms, but they only helped the royal family survive. What can we do? We can only continue to urge reforms in various newspapers." And Ning thought that you could still start a revolution. But a revolution is the product of the right time, right place, and right people. You can't rush it. His Excellency the Duke took the lead in changing the subject. Speaking of military affairs, I have sent someone to help you complete the admission procedures for the Brienne Royal Military Academy. You can set off with Christina then. Christina smiled and said, "That's great, we can ride in a carriage together." Chapter 36. A sudden straight ball. After seeing off Robespierre, Ning stayed in Paris for a few more days, and then set off for the Brienne Military Academy with Christina. The Duke's family sent 2 carriages, one carrying Christina and Ning, as well as their maids, and the other carrying the servants who would accompany the eldest lady to the military academy for 5 years. In the carriage, Christina was very excited about the upcoming military academy life and kept chattering. Ning was actually a little curious about what the Brienne Military Academy would teach. Could it be teaching how to line up and how to form a team? At this time, Christina suddenly asked Ning seriously, "Andy, will you duel with others in the military academy?" Ning frowned slightly. "Don't say that. It seems that I like to duel with others." "But you initiated the duel with Reginald." Ning was shocked. At that time, he thought that he had a cheat and that he would win the duel, so he threw the gloves in anger. Now that he knows that cheats cannot guarantee a sure win, he will think twice before throwing the gloves. But he couldn't tell Christina the truth, so he could only say, "After dancing with death 3 times, I decided to cherish my life more. So miss, I won't fight with others easily anymore. Even if someone challenges me to a fight, I will just admit defeat." Christina frowned. "Why?" "Well, you mentioned this, didn't you want me to fight as little as possible?" "Of course not. I told you to seldom initiate duels, but if someone else provokes you, then you have to accept the challenge, right?" Ning raised her eyebrows. "This." Christina smiled. "I think you look super handsome when you win the duel. In fact, during the time you were recovering from your injury, I attended tea parties, and the noble ladies all wanted to get to know you through me. Can you imagine that they actually want to make friends with the son of a leatherworker? It's a pity that even if you have recovered from your injury, you didn't come to our tea party. Instead, you hang out with the Bretons all day. You are not from the same hometown as them. Why do you keep attending their clubs?" Christina thought that the Brittany Club was a hometown association, but she didn't know that it had become a gathering of gentlemen with Enlightenment ideas. Ning asked curiously, "Miss Christina, what do you think of Rousseau and Voltaire?" Christina frowned. "My teacher asked me to read their articles all day long. I read them, but their articles were abstruse and difficult to understand. I didn't want to read them at all." Ning curled her lips. "Those are the most progressive ideas now. These ideas will change France in the future." Christina, "Will it? When will it change?" 1789, but I can't say. Ning could only put on the posture of a riddler. "When the time is right, it will." "What will France become like then?" Christina stared at Ning. "Will it become so that even if I fall in love with the son of a cobbler, it won't cause criticism from others?" Ning was shocked. "What kind of straight ball attack is this? But my system didn't give any hints. Could it be that this system has a lag?" He hurriedly observed Christina's expression and found that the girl was very serious, and didn't look like she was joking. "Ning, yes." At this time, the older maid who accompanied Christina interrupted Ning. "No. How can the daughter of the Duke be on an equal footing with the son of a cobbler? Such a day will never come." The old maid glared at Ning fiercely and said, "Mr. Frost, you'd better stop dreaming about this as soon as possible. It's not good for your future. Even if you get a title for your military exploits, it's only the lowest lord, which is a long way from the Duke." "Ning, I know." Christina shrugged her shoulders and looked a little lost. Ning spoke to comfort her. "I may not be able to fall in love with you, but we can be comrades in arms. The friendship between comrades in arms may be more lasting than love, right?" Christina looked up at Ning and smiled. At this time, Ning's system was suddenly updated. "Christina seems to want to cross the boundary of love with you, but she is not ready to challenge the secular view, so you can only continue to maintain a close friendship." The relationship with Christina has been upgraded to a close friend. "Well, it turns out that my system is not real time." Christina probably had such an idea a long time ago, but the system did not respond at all. And because Ning relied on the system to control her interpersonal relationships, she didn't notice some of Christina's performance at all. "It seems that I still have to observe the words and expressions of others more in the future and not rely too much on the system." At this time, Fanny suddenly said, "Even if you want to develop a comradeship, you have to be in the same unit, right? Aristocratic women like the eldest lady, even if they join the army, will generally join the Guards Corps and other units responsible for ceremonial tasks in the future, and will not bear actual tasks. And Mr. Frost will definitely be assigned to the field army. Because he has no title and is not Swiss, the royal guards don't want him. And Ning patted her maid. Hey. I just calmed the young lady down. Fanny, at this time, we should tell the truth and not let the young lady have unrealistic expectations. In fact, when you arrive at the Brienne Military Academy, you and the young lady won't see each other most of the time. And Ning, won't you see each other in class? The young lady's courses are different from yours. The young lady's courses are mainly about horse riding, etiquette and the like, while you mainly learn infantry combat. And Ning, Fanny, how come you know the courses at the Brienne Military Academy so well? Because I am an excellent maid and have done my homework in advance. Fanny said with some pride, although my master is the son of a shoemaker, I will not slack off. And Ning was shocked. Did you just express your contempt for the son of a shoemaker in a euphemism? No, it's your illusion. Fanny said with her chin held high. And Ning turned to Christina. I will try to go to more balls and salons, and I will see you there. Christina nodded. Yes. But you go to balls, you can't dance, won't it be boring to stand there? And Ning, I will learn to dance. I think my excellent maid will be able to teach me. Fanny curled her lips. I can dance, but I just can, not proficient. I can't guarantee that I can teach you. And Ning, it's okay, I trust you. Christina, well, how about I teach you? As soon as she opened her mouth, the old maid coughed. Christina shut up obediently. At this time, the carriage driver suddenly opened the small window in the front of the carriage. We're about to arrive at a post station. You can go to the cafe next to the post station to rest while changing horses. Christina, got it. And Ning stretched her muscles. To be honest, my butt is a little sore after sitting in the carriage for so long. Fanny, what can I do if my butt hurts now? We won't get to Brienne until tomorrow, and we've only started a quarter of the journey. Tomorrow. Chapter 37 My Corsican Neighbors. That night, Ning and his party, no, it should be Miss Christina and her party stayed in a hotel next to the post station. The next day, after about 2 hours of travel, the driver knocked on the window to inform, Brina is almost here. Christina immediately leaned on the window and looked out. Ning looked over Christina's shoulder and looked out the window. He only saw the quaint old streets and few pedestrians. Christian muttered, there are so few pedestrians. Fanny, miss, although this city is the location of the military academy, including the military academy students and teachers, there are only less than 40,000 people in total. Christina asked in confusion, how many people are there in Paris? Ning, about 1 million. Christina was amazed, so many. So this city is only 1/25 of Paris. Fanny, probably less than that. After all, many of the residents here are students of the Brienne Military Academy, and there are even fewer locals. As soon as the voice fell, Ning saw a group of military academy students passing by the window. These students were not tall and looked like Boy Scouts. He couldn't help but complain, how old are the students in this military academy? There are people from 10 to 20 years old. Fanny replied, those people just now should be people returning to the dormitory after class. Ning, isn't there a wall around the military academy? No, in fact, not every student lives in the dormitory. You live in the house rented by the Duke. His Excellency the Duke has paid the rent for 5 years in one go. In addition to attending classes, students have to participate in various social activities in the rest of their time. The main customers of the cafes and tennis halls in this city are students from the Brienne Military Academy. Ning said oh. He originally thought that the management of the military academy would be very strict, but he didn't expect it to be so loose. While talking, the coachman tapped on the car window. Mr. Frost, we have arrived at your residence. Ning, where I live? How far is Miss Christina's residence? Fanny, the Duke bought a manor for the lady. It's still some distance from here. We have to get off here. Well, the Duke said something about asking me to help take care of Christina. He thought he would live with Christina, but it turned out that he lived in a private house and the lady lived in the manor. Fanny had already got off the car with her gifts, so Ning had to get up. At this time, Christina grabbed Ning's hand. I hold balls and salons every week, come often. Ning nodded, I will. Christina reluctantly let go of her hand. Ning got out of the car and looked up at the house in front of him. In fact, compared to the residence in the royal palace, this house looks a little newer. It should have been built recently. Fanny was carrying a box and knocking on the door downstairs of the house. A middle-aged woman opened the door, looked at Fanny, and then looked at Ning behind her. "Come in, I've been waiting for you for a long time." "Ning, what is the name of the landlady?" "Master, you can call me Mrs. Anton." Ning said hurriedly, "I'm not a master, I'm just the son of a leatherworker." Mrs. Anton turned around and looked at Ning for one more second. "Wow, then you must have made a fortune, to be able to have such a beautiful maid and to pay 5 years' rent in one go." Ning, "The maid was assigned to me by His Excellency the Duke of Orleans, and the house was also rented by His Excellency the Duke." "Then you must be the Duke's great benefactor. Where are you from?" "Scene." Ning answered the name of her hometown in this time and space. Mrs. Anton was amazed. "I'm from Normandy, no wonder I speak with a British accent." Ning, "The Norman conquest was 700 years ago, and the King of England across the sea is no longer a Norman, but a German from Hanover." Mrs. Anton looked at Ning in confusion. "As the son of a leatherworker, you know a lot." Ning pulled out the shield that she had used many times in front of Christina. "I learned it in Sunday school. The priest where we are likes history and often tells us these historical allusions." Mrs. Anton nodded, not meaning to be serious about this. "Come upstairs with me, you live on the second floor, I will cook your breakfast and dinner every day, and your maid can go downstairs to use the kitchen if she wants to make afternoon tea or something." "Fanny, my master is the son of a cobbler, and he doesn't seem to have the habit of having afternoon tea." "Ning, is it my illusion? Why do I feel that you are always beating around the bush to say that I am the son of a cobbler?" "It's your illusion." Fanny paused. "If you pay for the materials yourself, I will also be happy to prepare afternoon tea for you." Ning thought about her current savings and shook her head. "Forget it." "Wait, there won't even be afternoon coffee, right? Coffee is very expensive now. Because France is now fighting the 7 Years' War, which it was delayed for decades, and its connection with overseas colonies has been severely disrupted by the Royal Navy, so coffee and sugar are very expensive right now." Ning curled his lips. He didn't have to drink coffee. His habit of drinking coffee was forced out by the 996 work schedule before he traveled through time. With such high-intensity work, he really couldn't stand it without coffee. "Mrs. Anton, it's up to you to decide what you want to drink. As for hygiene, I'm not responsible for it since you have a maid. Remember, when the church bell rings in the morning, you go out to school. You don't have to walk too fast and you won't be late." Ning, "You know all this so well. Was the previous tenant also a cadet at a military academy?" "Of course. The people who rent houses in our city are all young masters who come to attend military academies. Sons of cobblers like you are rare. Mrs. Luna from the next street rented her house to a poor guy from Corsica. It is said that he was funded by His Majesty the King." Ning shuddered. "Corsica? There should be only one person from Corsica at this time. Good man, he actually lives in the same block as me. I must find a chance to visit him. But it would seem too abrupt to run over like this. I really should find a way to strike up a conversation at school." "Ning, where does this Mrs. Luna live? I'm a little curious about the Corsicans, and I want to learn Italian from them." "Mrs. Anton, go out and turn left all the way to the intersection, then turn left and walk a few steps. It's the 2-story house with a conspicuous red roof." Ning said "Oh," and asked, "How do I get to the military academy from here? If it's on the way, I should be able to meet the future French emperor on the way to class." "Fanny, I know the way. After we settle down, I'll take you there." You actually knew that this is your first time in Brienne, too? You are indeed a perfect and elegant maid." Ning nodded. "Then I'll leave it to you." Chapter 38. I am a nobleman, a Corsican nobleman. After settling down, Ning and Fanny walked on the streets of Brienne together. In the city of Brienne, you can feel the pastoral scenery even when walking on the streets. That feeling is a bit like when Ning was a child in her previous life. She lived in the urban-rural fringe of a small city. When Ning was a child, there were many farmers carrying their own pickled sauerkraut to sell at the school gate. They were 20 cents a plate, and sprinkled with hot sauce. You could eat it happily for several minutes. Put down the plate and take a few steps. You can see farmland beside the asphalt road, and sometimes there are buffaloes turning the fields. This kind of scene was rarely seen by Ning when he was in junior high school. When he grew up and wanted to experience the same atmosphere, he had to play games like My Summer Vacation. And now Brienne makes Ning feel familiar. Brienne doesn't have asphalt roads yet, it's more pastoral. And Ning can even smell the smell of feces when walking on the road. It's too pastoral. Fanny, master, you seem to be very concerned about the smell around you. And Ning, is it okay? You can see that. I'm a maid, and it's my duty to observe the master's expression at any time. This is not as simple as observing the expression, right? And Ning thought to herself, she didn't show any feeling about the smell in the air just now, but Fanny still saw it. Is Fanny's role the kind of perfect and chic maid? That kind of maid must be able to stop time. While Ning was complaining in her heart, she saw a bakery sign in front of her, and a woman came out with a bag of bread. The bread in the woman's arms looked like hard baguettes. And Ning couldn't help asking Fanny, that? Are all French breads the kind of baguettes that can be used as weapons? Is there no softer bread to eat? And Ning stayed in Paris for a few months, and all the bread she ate was hard. Even the bread basket on the Duke's dining table was filled with hard bread like sawdust. Unexpectedly, she saw hard baguettes in a different place. Fanny looked at Ning in confusion. Soft bread? Do you mean cake? Damn, there really is no soft bread in this world? Wait, and Ning suddenly remembered a saying, although Europe knows how to ferment, it is only used to make cheese and wine, and it does not ferment the dough for baking bread. If bread is made from unfermented dough, wouldn't the baked bread be as hard as wood? Damn it, I thought that after traveling to France, at least I wouldn't suffer any hardship in terms of food, but I didn't expect that I was careless. Fanny watched Ning's ever-changing expressions from the side, with a puzzled look on her face. What are you thinking about? Did I do anything to make you show such a colorful expression? And Ning, no, you didn't do anything. How far is it from Brienne Military Academy? Not very far. After all, this city is not big. After turning in front, it is the main shopping street of this city. Tailor shops and other things are all on this street. Go to the end and turn again, and it is the road leading to the military academy. After speaking, Ning just turned the corner, and a street that was slightly less idyllic stretched out in front of him into the distance. This street was paved with large bricks, which was obviously flatter than the road Ning had just walked on, and the sound of horse hooves hitting the road was crisper than before. There were shops on both sides of the road, and there were more pedestrians on the street. And Ning even saw a bookstore on the street. There was a stall in front of the bookstore selling newspapers. And Ning walked up and saw that the newspapers on the stall were all published in Paris several days or even a week ago. Seeing that Ning was interested, the newspaper vendor came up to her and said mysteriously, "The latest newspaper. It even serializes the Queen's latest love story. It is said that the Queen has recently hooked up with a commoner, and that commoner has won 3 duels and killed an earl, a marquis, and a duke. It's amazing." Fanny, PFFT. And Ning, what are you laughing at? I'm not laughing, it's your illusion. Seeing that Ning was not interested, the vendor said, "Why don't you take a look at this, the latest political commentary in Paris? It calls for the establishment of a parliament like the United Kingdom, and in the future nothing His Majesty the King says will count, and it must be approved by the parliament. The gentlemen in Paris say that this is called, what? And Ning, constitutional monarchy. Oh, yes. Constitutional monarchy. It's so exciting. How about a copy? It's tantamount to rebellion against the king." And Ning thought to herself, this is nothing exciting. In a few years, the people of Paris will give the king an even more exciting surprise. And Ning, give me a copy of the Queen's love history. I want to read the story of her and the commoner who won 3 duels. Okay. The stall owner immediately took out a copy and stuffed it into Ning's hand. This is the last one. And Ning was about to pay when Fanny stepped forward and put a 5 copper coin on the stall. "Fanny, it seems that everyone wants to read about the love affairs of the Queen." The vendor smiled and said, "That's right. After all, she is a woman from the Habsburg family. It is said that she is very beautiful. Men can, relieve themselves just by looking at the Queen's name." Fanny looked at Ning sideways. "Is that so? And Ning, I just want to see what Mirabeau is up to." In addition to Mr. Mirabeau, there are many people in Paris who are writing about the love affairs of the Queen. And Ning was responding to the maid's words when the door of the bookstore next to him suddenly opened. The clerk threw a child in an ill-fitting military uniform out of the bookstore. "Go away. My books are still for sale. They are not for you to stand here and read." The child who was thrown out looked only 9 or 10 years old, not even as high as Ning's trouser waist. The military uniform on his body seemed to be more than 1 size too big, which made him look like a clothes rack. He had brown curly hair and a pair of bright eyes, and looked very smart. He stood up from the ground cursing and picked up the military cap that had fallen to the ground. And Ning noticed that this guy was left-handed. At this time, several passing military academy students pointed at the child who was thrown out and laughed. Look! The Corsican guy was thrown out again. Corsican poor guy. The bookstore should ban him from entering. And Ning was shocked. Corsican, left-handed. Isn't this the one? So he stepped forward and asked with concern, "Are you okay, sir? You'd better stay away from that Corsican dwarf, he will bring bad luck to you." Several children in the distance advised, "Any distinguished gentleman will not have anything to do with this unlucky Corsican guy." And Ning took out a handkerchief and handed it to the unlucky Corsican guy. "Wipe your face. You just supported yourself on the ground with your hands and immediately touched your face, leaving dust marks." The Corsican child stuffed the handkerchief back into Ning's hand, then took out his own handkerchief. "I have one, but thank you anyway." And Ning stood up straight and said to the children who were laughing at him, "A real gentleman should be kind to others. If he sees someone fall, he should step forward to help them up instead of laughing at them." The children looked at each other, then ran away in frustration. Then Ning extended her hand to the child she was helping. "Hello, my name is Andy Frost. I am the son of a leatherworker, and I am enrolled in the Brienne Military Academy this year." The child hesitated for a moment, and then reluctantly said, "Napoleon Bivanetbert, also enrolled in the Brienne Military Academy this year." The child spoke with a very heavy accent, and was a little hesitant. Obviously he was not particularly used to French. Then he emphasized in awkward French, "I am a nobleman, a Corsican nobleman." Chapter 39, Take this book, The Social Contract, and we will be half-brothers. And Ning had an idea, so she said in Italian, "So you are Corsican, then would it be more convenient for me to communicate with you in Italian?" As soon as she finished speaking, and Ning felt Fanny's suspicious gaze. But even if Fanny doubted, it didn't matter. The system had updated Fanny's favorability before, and now this guy trusted her very much, and she was one of them. Moreover, French and Italian belong to the Latin language family. If you master one of them, it would be easier to learn the second one. At most, I will be a little tired, and add the title of language genius on my head, but this burden is not enough. If it doesn't work, I can find Talleyrand and ask him to help announce that this is a gift from my Lord Jehovah. In this day and age, the Catholic Church still speaks with authority, and a little maid probably can't question the authority of the Holy See. Of course, the situation was different after the Great Revolution. At that time, the priests split into the oath-taking faction and the oath-rejecting faction, and they fought internally for many years. Objectively, the influence of the Holy See in France was sharply reduced, so that when he was crowned, he made a surprising move and took the crown from the Pope and wore it himself. France is a country known as a filial son of Catholics, and it has done many things to cheat the Vatican in history. France and Hungary are two extremes. One is a filial son in double quotation marks, and the other is a true filial son of Catholicism. Anyway, and Ning didn't care so much, and directly turned on his plug-in and said to Napoleon in Italian, "Hello, my friend. I don't speak Italian very well, please correct me if I'm wrong." The young Bonaparte widened his eyes and continued to say in poor French, "No, your Italian has a bit of a Genoese accent." And Ning was secretly surprised. Genoa was once the sovereign of Corsica, and it might provoke Napoleon's disgust. But he didn't know how to make himself speak Italian with a local Corsican accent. In fact, he didn't know the difference between the Genoese accent and the local Corsican accent. At this time, Napoleon also switched back to Italian. "You are the first person who is willing to speak Italian to me since I came to France." And Ning, "Really? I just don't want to waste an opportunity to practice speaking with a native Italian speaker." "Ah, your accent has become like Corsican again," Napoleon said in surprise. "It feels like I have led you astray." And Ning was shocked. He had figured out the mechanism of his language plugin. It turned out that when talking to people from a certain place, he would switch to the corresponding authentic accent. This is awesome. I will definitely get the title of language genius. "Napoleon, have you been to Corsica?" "No," I said, "I just learned Italian." "As for the fact that you feel like I speak with a Corsican accent when I speak now, it may be a psychological effect. You must miss your hometown very much?" Napoleon nodded. "Yes, after coming to France, they laugh at me all day long, saying that I am at war from Corsica and that I am defeated by the French. Every time they say that, I miss my hometown even more. Wait and see, Sooner or later I will turn Corsica into an independent country and a pearl in the Mediterranean. At this time, Napoleon was still a passionate Corsican youth. His enthusiasm would gradually die out only when he encountered obstacles everywhere in his homeland of Corsica in the future. Before that, Ning planned to follow him. Although this was the emperor in the future, he was only 10 years old now, and it was still easy and pleasant for Ning to coax a child. "I'm in Paris," Ning said. "People say that Pauli's attempt to establish a republic in Corsica was the first of its kind. Later, the Yankees in the New World established a republic under the influence of Pauli, because the struggle of the Corsicans showed that the republic is the mainstream of the future." Napoleon looked at Ning doubtfully. "Really? Do the adults in Paris really say that?" "No, not really. The adults in Paris would only ask where the hell Corsica is." But Ning said shamelessly, "Yes. If people in Paris now advocate freedom, they will cross the ocean to the New World to watch them build their own country. If the Republic of Corsica existed, they wouldn't have to cross the ocean. They could just go to Marseilles and take a day's boat ride to see the Republic under the principle of separation of powers. In Corsica, they might see the dreams of Rousseau, Montesquieu and Voltaire become reality without having to cross the ocean." Ning boasted, making the Corsican teenagers very happy. But Ning changed the subject. "It's a pity that Corsica's attempt was suppressed by the reactionary and decadent Bourbon dynasty. This is not only the misfortune of Corsica, but also the misfortune of all of us who pursue freedom and equality." Ning said this, which actually confirmed his identity as a comrade. Regardless of whether they are French or Corsicans, they are all comrades with the same pursuit. This also laid an opportunity for the future breakup between Napoleon and the Corsican independence hero Pauli. Pauli was actually an old aristocrat. He rebelled against Genoa only to maintain the old aristocratic tradition in Corsica, not for any freedom. As long as Napoleon is deeply influenced by the Enlightenment, he will definitely break up with Pauli in the future. In that case, there is no need to worry about Napoleon staying on Corsica as the island owner. Napoleon was fooled by Ning and no longer had the arrogance he had at the beginning. "I never thought about the problem from this direction. So that's it, we are comrades." Ning, "Yes, all the followers of Rousseau, Voltaire and Montesquieu are comrades. We are the most progressive force in the world. One day the world will change because of us. You should not just focus on Corsica, but change the whole world." The young Napoleon whispered softly, "Change the world." Ning snapped his fingers and said to Fanny, who had been watching their conversation from behind, "Fanny, go buy a copy of Rousseau's social contract. I will give it to this young comrade from Corsica as a gift for our first meeting." "Fanny, the one you just called out was probably my name, but I have to tell you that I don't understand Italian at all. If you want me to do something, please say it again in French." Ning was stunned for a moment. He was so excited about fooling Napoleon just now that he didn't bother to change the language. He repeated what he just said in French. Napoleon suddenly woke up from his dream. "No, I have no reason to accept your gift. I just met you today. Ning, but I think you will definitely become a follower of Mr. Rousseau. I have such a feeling. After all, you are from Corsica, which once briefly practiced the Republic." Ning was a little impressed with himself. He only now realized that he seemed to be quite good at fooling people like this. Maybe he was wasted his talent as a programmer in his previous life. Napoleon was still a little hesitant, and Ning continued to add, "This is how I am in Paris. I give a copy of Mr. Rousseau's The Social Contract to everyone who has the potential to become a comrade. In this way, the next time we meet, we can exchange our thoughts on reading. Believe me, this is a very pleasant thing." As he was talking, Fanny bought a book and came out. So Ning snatched the book and thrust it into Napoleon's arms. "I'm looking forward to our next chat. Well, I still need to get familiar with the way to school and pick up my military uniform by the way, so I'll take my leave first." Napoleon, "Oh, okay." He paused and squeezed out a sentence, "Thank you. Ning, don't thank me for the book. I gave it to you to satisfy my selfish desire to increase my comrades. I also want to thank you for accepting the book from a stranger like me." "No," Napoleon hesitated for a moment, "I want to thank you for helping me out just now." "Didn't you thank me already? It's just a small favor, not something worth thanking repeatedly. Well, goodbye." Ning gently raised the hat on his head. After doing this, Ning walked towards the military academy without looking back, leaving a check back to the young Napoleon. At this moment, the system popped up a prompt, "You have left a deep impression on Napoleon Bonaparte. and the trust level has directly reached friendly. And Ning licked his lips. Humph, no matter how great he becomes in the future, he is just a child now, and I will eat him up like a baby. When the First French Empire is established, I will go and work with Zallard Carnot on logistics, researching new artillery and muskets, but I won't go to the front line. It's settled. Chapter 40. Brienne rose. After bidding farewell to the young Napoleon, and Ning even relaxed his pace. After all, he had already embraced the thickest thigh of this era. He would wait for Napoleon to ascend the throne and become emperor, which would be fun for at least 20 years. In order to make himself more flexible in riding the fence, he would continue to collect more stamps. Now he has become familiar with all the Jacobins, and Lafayette of the Pelinists can also speak to him. In the middle, as long as he knows a few more Girondins, he can seamlessly switch between riding the fence during the French Revolution. First ride the Pelinists, then become the Girondins. After Louis V is in love, I will be the leader of the Jacobins. When the Jacobins are about to be finished, I will go to find Napoleon. Then hook up with a few famous chameleons such as Talleyrand and Fouché, and everyone will change their course according to the wind. He rode a fence all the way from the French Revolution to the Bourbon Restoration. Then, by 1848, he would be almost an 80-year-old man, and he could finally go to the streets and burn with passion. Look, what a magnificent life! And Ning was thinking happily, when he suddenly noticed Fanny looking at him suspiciously. What's wrong? And Ning asked, while looking down at himself to make sure his clothes were not torn. Fanny, the master used to be in Paris, and he often went out with Bishop Talleyrand, and he would stay in the monastery for the whole day. Before Ning could figure out what was going on, he nodded directly, indeed. What's the big deal? We were playing bridge. Wait, what do you think we were going to do? And Ning finally realized what Fanny was hinting at. That's not true. I went to the Breton Club to play bridge. If you don't believe me, ask Robespierre. Write to him and ask. Fanny, what? Mr. Robespierre is also a fellow enthusiast. And Ning, no. You can doubt me, but how can you doubt the incorruptible Robespierre? That guy, I doubt he has ever guided, the one, to solve the troubles of youth by himself. Fanny was not moved at all. The little kid named Napoleon just now is just the right age to join the monastery choir. And Ning was overwhelmed. No. Believe me, we really were discussing current affairs and playing bridge in the monastery. I haven't been to that monastery for worship, and I have no way to verify whether what you said is true or not. And Ning originally wanted to continue to drag out fellow enthusiasts such as Marat and Danton to testify. Unexpectedly, Fanny predicted Ning's actions directly. By the way, Mr. Danton and Mr. Marat are not trustworthy. In comparison, Mr. Mirabeau is quite trustworthy because he is famous for liking beautiful girls. Damn, Mirabeau was exempted from suspicion because he loved beautiful women? This wine-drinking aristocrat. Poor future Jacobin heroes, in Fanny's cognition, they have been branded with an inherent imprint. It seems that in order to change Fanny's cognition, she can only forcibly show her interest in Christina. At this time, Fanny suddenly sighed. I won't tease you anymore, so why are you so keen on that Corsican kid? Faced with Fanny's serious questioning, and Ning couldn't answer. After all, it's one thing to say whether someone believes it after secretly reading the script. If it causes the dislocation of history and the whole flow is deviated, it will be difficult to deal with it. And Ning is still very clear about his own weight. Now he is just sitting on the fence relying on reading the script. If he deviates and does not follow the original script, he can't rely on himself to accurately grasp the pulse of the times. If he had the ability to grasp the pulse of the times, he would have been financially free in his previous life. So it was impossible for him to tell Fanny about these things. So Ning had to say, when he fell just now, the courage and forbearance in his eyes touched me. And think about it, he was kicked out of the bookstore because he wanted to read books for free in the bookstore. Such a hard-working young nobleman is rare. So I couldn't help but want to get to know him better. Fanny, really? And Ning, what other reasons could there be? Fanny pursed her lips. The logic is correct, but the master is a man with many secrets. You suddenly jumped out and said that you were the son of a shoemaker, but you won the sword fight against the son of a noble who had learned swordsmanship since childhood, and then won the battle-hardened knight in a pistol duel. You also speak German and Italian. Although I don't understand Italian and have no way of judging whether your pronunciation is authentic, I know that as the son of a shoemaker, you definitely know a lot. Besides, I always feel that if I ask you to perform the job of a leather worker and tan a piece of the most ordinary fur, you will definitely not be able to do it. And Ning, well, this is because my family's leather workshop will be inherited by my eldest brother, and I have not been trained as an heir since I was a child. Yes, you were sent to learn Italian and German, maybe Latin, martial arts, sword, horse riding, and shooting since you were a child. And Ning curled his lips. To be honest, he just relied on Fanny's high trust in him and focused on impressing Napoleon. He didn't think about how to face Fanny's questioning at all. At this time, Fanny continued, however, although the master has so many secrets, I won't deliberately ask if the master doesn't say it. You don't ask deliberately. Fanny, when the time is right in the future, the master will definitely tell all his secrets. Fanny is looking forward to that day. No, that day probably won't come. And Ning was relieved. Sure enough, her golden finger was reliable. Fanny was her own person. Despite so many doubts, she chose to suppress them. At this time, Fanny suddenly changed the subject. The lecture hall of Brienne Military Academy is in front. The master will come here to attend classes starting tomorrow. And Ning, thank you for leading the way. Have you actually walked this road? No, I just memorized the map. As for where to get the military uniform, I don't know. Ah, there's a banner over there, probably over there. Fanny said as she walked towards several non-commissioned officers who seemed to be senior officers of the military academy. And Ning looked at those tall seniors in military uniforms, and suddenly felt that they would rush up and introduce themselves loudly. I am a fourth-year student, Corporal Morishita. At this time, several seniors also saw Ning, and the leader immediately shouted loudly, wait a minute. Are you a student of the military academy? You actually brought a maid into the school, how shameless. And Ning frowned at this shout. What the hell, do you have to shout loudly even if you don't drive a warship? As a man who had seen more spirited scenes, and Ning immediately responded with great spirit, brother. I don't know the way, please let the maid lead the way, I will never let her come here again. Asshole. Can't you read the map yourself? How can such a bug be a good officer? And Ning was not polite either, brother, our military academy graduates only have the rank of non-commissioned officer. The senior brother immediately got angry, fuck, you dare to talk back. Me. Suddenly, another senior brother grabbed the hand of the senior brother, wait a minute. Don't you know him? He was recommended by the Duke of Orleans for admission, and he challenged 3 duels in Paris and won all 3 times. No, I only challenged 1 duel, the next 2 were not challenged by me, don't talk nonsense. The senior brother looked at Ning again, you are the noble killer, the duel king. No, I'm not. Then the senior brother's expression visibly eased, and he patted Ning on the shoulder, although you're just a cadet, you still have to recognize the map. Don't let your maid send you here again, it's immoral. We are the infantry department, all men, and the girls are in the cavalry and ceremonial departments, do you understand? Speaking of which, senior brother, you slid down too quickly, is it really okay to be so kind to me? Forget it, the senior brother is so kind, and Ning doesn't need to deliberately provoke him. And Ning, besides the Duke of Telestal, are there other nobles who send their daughters here? The kind-hearted senior brother shrugged, the times are not good now, and there are many nobles who can't afford the dowry for their daughters. There are only 2 ways to afford the dowry. One is to send your daughter to a monastery, but that also requires a donation. If you can't afford that, you can only come to the military academy. Hey, and Ning thought, there is such a setting. Wait a minute. If poor nobles who can't afford dowries send their daughters to serve as cavalry, then when times get worse and nobles go bankrupt, wouldn't it be possible to form a cavalry composed entirely of noble ladies? Chapter 41 Military School Life begins. And Ning asked the 2 senior brothers, do the noble ladies live in the dormitories or? Most of them should live in the dormitories, because they are all poor nobles whose families have no money. The senior brother pointed to the tree-lined path next to the auditorium. That road leads to the ladies' dormitory, but you'd better not have any bad ideas. The dormitory warden is a fierce tigress. She will send you to the whipping platform. And Ning frowned. Will you be sent to the whipping platform just because you accidentally walked into the vicinity of the girls' dormitory? You can try it. The senior brother shrugged. Last year, a Marcus' son didn't believe in evil and broke into the girls' dormitory. As a result, he was whipped with a whip dipped in salt water for 20 times, and his flesh was torn. Why is it that the Marquis' son always causes trouble? Ning, then didn't the Marquis himself come to the school to make trouble? This is the Brienne Royal Military Academy, a place where future non-commissioned officers for France are trained according to the order of His Majesty the Emperor. Can the Marquis be more powerful than the king? The senior brother asked back. Another senior brother said, of course, not every school rule is enforced so strictly. There are 10 rules in the school rules that will result in caning, but except for the rule that you can't go to the girls' dormitory, I haven't seen anyone caned for violating other rules. Of course, it may be because those who violate the rules are all children of nobles. You, a commoner, can give it a try. Ning, no, I won't try. Are there many commoners in this school? The two senior brothers laughed together. How can there be many? How many commoners have you seen as non-commissioned officers? Hey, I know that most officers are nobles, but I thought non-commissioned officers. The two senior brothers laughed even more happily. What are you thinking about? Non-commissioned officers must at least be literate. How many commoners can read? And Ning couldn't help but frown. He remembered that the literacy rate in France was not low in this era. In big cities like Paris, there were many commoner readers of newspapers and various pamphlets. But in the eyes of these two nobles, commoners were still illiterate. And Ning shook his head. I remember there were quite a lot of non-commissioned officers in the army. There were more than a dozen sergeants in an infantry battalion. Are there so many nobles in France? And not every noble will become a soldier. Senior, don't think too much. There may be civilian non-commissioned officers, but you won't find many companions in this Brienne Military Academy. As far as I know, you are the only civilian recommended by a noble for admission this year. Well, it turned out to be like this. And Ning originally thought that since she could go to the military academy with a recommendation of the Duke, then others should have no problem as well. There should be many civilians who get admission with recommendations like this. No wonder the French army had problems at the beginning of the Great Revolution. The army has been the target of revolution since the non-commissioned officers, so it would be strange if the combat effectiveness was high. Senior, it's enough chatting. Here, I'll give you the military uniform. The size may not be right. If it doesn't fit, you can take it to the tailor shop to modify it yourself. Do you want to modify it yourself? And Ning was a little surprised. Of course, in fact, many people find tailors to make their own military uniforms, but as a civilian like you probably don't have a dedicated tailor. And Ning, that's true. My maid was lent to me by the Duke. In theory, Fanny was indeed lent to Ning by the Duke, but judging from the Duke's expression, he did not care much about a maid, and probably would not ask Ning to return her. And Ning took the military uniform that his senior brother stuffed in and immediately opened it and put it on. The French military uniforms in the kingdom era were gray and white, and looked white from a distance, so when the royalists rebelled later, people called the royalists the White Party. And Ning, isn't this white military uniform easy to get dirty? The senior brother shrugged. That depends on the ability of your maid. It is her duty to ensure that the clothes on the master are clean. And Ning glanced at Fanny, who immediately said, don't worry, I won't let you go out in dirty clothes. And Ning was about to reply when a carriage drove past him, and the mud splashed by the wheels fell on his white stockings. One of the senior brothers was amazed. I haven't seen this coat of arms before. This should be the daughter of some poor noble family going to the dormitory. Yes, this morning I saw a young lady riding in a carriage, and it didn't even have a roof. It's hard to imagine that a noble family would be so poor that they can't even afford a carriage with a roof. However, the young lady was quite pretty and plump. And Ning was amazed. It seemed that the number of young noble ladies in this school was more than Ning had imagined. Maybe he would really see a ceremonial cavalry composed of daughters of noble families in the future. He turned his head and asked Fanny, Christina shouldn't live in that dormitory, right? Of course not. The young lady lives in a manor on the outskirts of the city. The Duke bought a beautiful small manor specifically for her. You will know when you go to the ball on the weekend. Fanny's words made the two senior brothers very excited. Ball. It's great. Usually we can only attend some balls held by our rural nobles, which are tasteless and boring. The ball at the Duke's house must be of Parisian level. And Ning, of course, the Duke also brought a chef from Paris, and the ball must have the most popular desserts in Paris. Senior brother, how do you know? I came here with Miss Christina. And Ning shrugged, then stuffed the military uniform and other things at Fanny. Then, my two brothers, we will take our leave now. Senior brother, goodbye, Remember not to be late tomorrow, don't blame me for not reminding you. In this way, Ning's life in Brienne Military Academy officially began. Originally, Ning thought that Brienne's military academy would be like the military training in China in later generations, with several months of Q training first. However, this did not happen. There was indeed Q training, but it was only conducted every morning. During the Q training, the students would take turns to serve as non-commissioned officers in the Q and be responsible for forming the team. When it was Ning's turn to serve as a non-commissioned officer, the nobles in the same class deliberately wanted to embarrass Ning, and only Napoleon obeyed his orders. Yes, Napoleon was Ning's classmate. Because only Ning had a good relationship with him, the two of them were called the proper combination by their fellow classmates, because one was a poor Corsican noble and the other was a commoner. The nobles subjectively believed that commoners were paupers, and the reason why Ning was generous was because he had the Duke's funding. Let's talk about the Q class. Faced with the noble classmates who refused to obey the management, Ning used his ultimate move. He took off his gloves. Having gloves thrown in the face meant initiating a duel. All the students knew that Ning was a noble killer who had killed 3 nobles. In addition, Ning had achieved an amazing record of being undefeated in swordsmanship class by relying on automatic defense and counterattack. Therefore, no one dared to accept Ning's duel and put themselves in danger. So as soon as Ning took off his gloves, the students immediately obeyed the management and obediently lined up. Relying on the school's Q training, Ning finally figured out how the formation of the line shooting in this era was made. It turned out that when lining up, the civilian soldiers were sandwiched by the non-commissioned officers from front to back and left to right. In a line formation of line infantry, non-commissioned officers would stand at the front of the 2 sides, and then non-commissioned officers would also be deployed in the middle of the front and the middle of the back. So the line infantry soldiers were actually forced onto the battlefield by the noble officers. Yes, literally forced. No wonder the morale could not be maintained once the line was disbanded. In addition to Q training in the morning, there are also various military technical trainings, such as 2 swordsmanship classes, 2 musket training classes and 1 horse riding class every week. As for why infantry sergeants learn horse riding, it seems that they are going to become messenger sergeants in the future. In the afternoon, it is basically the time for cultural classes. The military academy will teach sergeants French and mathematics. Napoleon is very good at mathematics, just as it is written in the biographies of later generations, but in Brienne of this time and space, his brilliance is overshadowed by Ning. Ning used the mathematical knowledge of later generations to deal with the mathematics of this era, and sometimes calculated faster than the teacher. Fortunately, mathematics in this era is already relatively developed, and Ning deliberately limited his problem-solving ideas and did not use the knowledge learned in the university advanced mathematics class, so he finally did not come up with something that would allow him to be published in the Journal of the French Academy of Sciences. In fact, Ning did not mind the school journal too much, but he had forgotten most of the advanced mathematics content and was not sure if he could handle it when he gave it back to the teacher. He was afraid of being exposed when facing the real mathematics master of this era. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 My Classmate Napoleon. In a blink of an eye, a month had passed since the military school life began. During this month, Ning and Napoleon fell to the bottom of the class. Napoleon was from Corsica and was poor. Ning was a commoner. But Ning had a magic weapon, taking off his gloves. As soon as he took off his gloves, the nobles would immediately speak nicely. Especially after Ning blocked the instructor's attack in the swordsmanship class with the anti-counterattack ability given by the system, no one dared to act rashly in front of Ning with gloves in hand. It is said that the noble classmates in the same class are already saying that Ning is actually the swordsmanship teacher of the Duke's family and a rare swordsmanship wizard. As for how a commoner can become a swordsmanship wizard, it is of course because Ning is actually a hidden aristocrat. The most exaggerated statement is that Ning is actually the son of Louis Xiv's illegitimate son and is fostered in the Duke of Orleans' home. But this rumor did not change the situation that Ning was excluded by noble classmates in the class. Ning didn't care. Anyway, Napoleon was destined to be ostracized because of his Corsican origin. Now she could take the opportunity of being ostracized to establish a deep friendship with a future French emperor. When Napoleon became emperor in the future, he would definitely remember his good friends who were ostracized together in Brienne. Moreover, after Napoleon became emperor, he liked to confer titles on his relatives and friends. Maybe she could also get a duke or a prince at that time. In the first month of life in the military academy, and Ning only saw the noble ladies who were also in Brienne military academy at Christina's ball. And Ning also danced with one of the girls with big breasts, and ended up stepping on her feet. The noble classmates who attended the ball together did not miss the opportunity to laugh at Ning until Ning took out the gloves. Napoleon had no interest in Christina's ball, but was forcibly dragged over by Ning, so he kept eating the desserts made by the chef brought by Christina from Paris in the dessert area. It can be seen that Napoleon, who was still a teenager, still had a childlike desire for desserts. It's normal for children to like sweets. But when Ning looked at Napoleon with an expression that said "Big brother understands you," he noticed it, and then Napoleon never ate any dessert again. He probably regarded this as a weakness of his own and stubbornly wanted to overcome it. In addition to inviting Napoleon to Christina's ball, Ning also invited Napoleon to her home many times to hold reading clubs and exchange ideas with him about reading the books of Rousseau and others. In addition, because Napoleon was reluctant to light candles himself, he would run to Ning's house from time to time at night to read by the light of the oil lamp. That night, Napoleon came again. After Fanny led him to Ning's study on the second floor, she looked at Ning with a meaningful look. Obviously, Fanny still suspected that Ning was a pervert who liked soda. Ning, Fanny, you have finished your work tonight, come here and read with us. I know you bought the latest romance novel today, so we don't have to light another lamp. Fanny, will this not disturb you? No. It's better to say that our discussion might disturb you. Fanny, hey, discussion? What kind of discussion? Ning was about to answer, but Napoleon couldn't help asking Ning, yesterday you told me that France has reached a point where social change is about to break out, and the French people are on the eve of awakening, so you mean that large-scale changes are about to come, right? Ning, yes, but humans are lazy creatures. As long as they can live, they will procrastinate. Napoleon asked with concern. How can we get them to act? Ning shrugged, maybe a natural disaster? Because a natural disaster makes it impossible for everyone to survive, so the total outbreak comes. Napoleon immediately retorted, how is it possible? France is so big, the climate is good, and there are fertile grain-producing areas everywhere. How big a natural disaster would it take to make the whole of France unable to survive? It can only be said that Napoleon was worthy of being here, and he immediately noticed the crux of the problem. Places with good natural conditions are not prone to large-scale revolutions. Places like Brazil, which are favored by God, are in such a bad state, but there has not been a great revolution. Because the natural conditions there are so good, people can get enough food with just a little effort. The reason why the French Revolution broke out in 1789 was because France had a whole year of natural disasters in 1788, and grain production decreased throughout the year. Even so, the people continued to starve until the middle of 1789, and then the revolution broke out. Ning, well, some things will come when they are supposed to. Napoleon curled his lips. He obviously didn't want to dwell on this issue related to the number of days, so he changed the subject directly. So assuming that the general outbreak comes, then what? Will France suddenly become the kind of civil society described by Rousseau? Ning shook her head, of course not. Why? Because France is such a big country, everyone's level of ideological awakening is different. People in Paris have a high literacy rate. They read Enlightenment newspapers all day long, listen to orators' speeches on the streets, and watch plays. They will naturally become qualified citizens quickly. But France still has vast countryside. The villagers have never been to school or even can't read. They don't know anything about the Enlightenment. They probably rose up in rebellion simply because they couldn't make ends meet. But these people will not become citizens all of a sudden just because of the change. Their initial demand is just to have enough food to eat. Once this demand is met, they will ask to live the stable life they had in the past. Napoleon frowned. You mean, the people will be divided? Yes, this is inevitable. Then what? What will happen after the division? Use your brain. By then, the people have already tried to use violence to express their ideas once. They will continue to resort to violence, and the division of the people will turn into a civil war. Napoleon looked at Ning in confusion. Why did you say this with an expression as if you had seen them do this with your own eyes? You seem to be talking about something that is bound to happen. Why are you so confident? Because I really saw it. For you it is the future, and for me it is the past written in history textbooks. Of course, and Ning couldn't say that, so Ning showed a mysterious smile. We can make a bet of 20 sous. Napoleon curled his lips. I won't bet with you. Betting is something you can only do when there are disagreements, but I am convinced by you. If France is destined to have a civil war in the future, don't we soldiers have a good chance? After all, in the chaotic era of years of civil war, the value of military force will increase. And Ning nodded. That's the case. In such a chaotic situation, it is even possible for a military dictatorship to be born. Just like Rome back then, think about Caesar and Octavian. That's right, you, Napoleon, will become the Caesar of France. Napoleon looked at Ning. I remember, Andy, you took the initiative to ask the Duke to recommend you to the Brienne Military Academy? Could it be that this is your plan to see through the future? No. I took the initiative to come to Brienne because you are here. I came to get close to you and hug your thighs. But Ning couldn't say this directly. Napoleon nodded to himself. What a foresight in action. Wait, is there something wrong? Am I pretending to be too high based on the script I read? At this time, Ning's system suddenly popped up a prompt. Napoleon Bonaparte admires you even more. Forget it, the result is good and everything is good. Chapter 43 Christmas 1780. Life in Brienne continued uneventfully. Ning always felt that the curriculum of the military academy was a little too slow. It took almost 3 months for the cadets to practice arranging infantry formations. When the first snow of 1780 fell in Brienne, the teachers of the military academy began to teach the cadets how to change formations and how to form anti-cavalry square formations. On the first day of teaching square formations, in order to increase the cadets' sense of reality, the school specially brought people from the school's cavalry department to let them experience the feeling of infantry facing cavalry charges. This was the first time Ning saw Christina in school. She wore a shiny breastplate, and her wavy long hair was tied into a ponytail, which came out of the groove specially reserved on the helmet and danced with the wind. She tucked her spear under her armpit and ran against the wind, reminiscent of the Maiden of Orleans hundreds of years ago. Behind Christina were 7 or 8 girls, including the big-breasted girl whose feet Ning had stepped on. Facing this group of cavalry, some of the cadets started to whistle. The school instructor shouted angrily, "Don't whistle. Maintain your formation." Experienced the horror of facing such an overwhelming attack on the battlefield. Instructor: if you want us to feel terrified, you shouldn't let the girls charge. One of the cadets shouted, "Now we just want to open our arms to them and let them rush into our arms." The noble children immediately laughed. Ning heard Napoleon mutter beside her, "Don't these rubbish know that even a lady on a horse can hit someone and cause serious injuries?" Ning echoed, "That's right, and before the collision, she has to be pierced through by the spears first." As they spoke, the girls began to circle around the square formation formed by the cadets, and the instructor began to explain, "Even the most well-trained war horses will be afraid when facing a neat forest of spears, so forming a square formation can effectively resist cavalry. Remember, the soldiers kneeling in the first row must support the butts of their guns on the ground, so as to resist the huge impact of the cavalry rushing up. The soldiers in the inner circle are responsible for firing at the cavalry. Although it is difficult to hit the cavalry while they are galloping, the side cross-sectional area of the cavalry is much larger than the front. As long as they keep shooting, they can always get some results. The long-term war has proved that even heavy cavalry such as cuirassier cavalry have no good way to deal with this square formation." At this time, a nobleman asked loudly, "Teacher, you said that the line formation is very vulnerable to cavalry charges, so why not use the square formation as the main combat formation?" The instructor frowned and looked at the person asking the question. "Good question, you idiot. Can anyone tell this idiot why?" At this time, Napoleon raised his hand. "Me. Napoleon." The instructor frowned slightly, but still called out Napoleon's name. He deliberately imitated the pronunciation of Italian, obviously mocking Napoleon's background. "Yes, the instructors of this school are all nobles under the flag of Old Paris, and they also look down on Napoleon from Corsica." Napoleon didn't care about the instructor's pronunciation at all, and answered the question directly. "The frontal firepower of the square formation is much weaker than that of the normal line formation. The same battalion, when arranged in a square formation, has its frontal firepower weakened to 1/4, and it cannot beat another battalion arranged in a line. Instructor, very good. You are right in one aspect. Unfortunately, it is only right in one aspect. Has anyone come to tell Napoleon what he missed? No one raised their hand. It was obvious that the nobles didn't know the answer at all. And Ning patted Napoleon on the shoulder and raised his hand. I'll do it. The instructor snorted, Humph, you do it, son of a cobbler. And Ning, it's artillery. I've been baptized by artillery on the battlefield and have seen how that thing kills and injures people. The shells will roll on the ground. After the linear formation shells roll over, at most 2 rows of 6 people will be knocked down. But when the shells roll over the square formation, the casualties will definitely be more than 6. Instructor, very good, you are right. You are worthy of being someone who has been on the battlefield. You even know that the shells will roll on the ground. That's it. The square formation is very vulnerable when facing artillery shells, so on the battlefield, cavalry is generally used to force the enemy to form a square formation, and then artillery is used to bombard it. You guys, reflect on yourself. You don't even understand something that even a civilian and a Corsican understand. And Ning heard Napoleon mutter softly, idiots are idiots. It has nothing to do with their background. That's right. And Ning patted Napoleon's shoulder again. For the next month, the main content of the morning Q training became changing from a line to a square formation. The instructors mechanically let the cadets practice this, repeating it over and over again. In this way, it was Christmas of 1780. That morning, Ning ran to find Napoleon and asked him to spend Christmas together. Ning had figured it out. Napoleon was a Corsican, and it must be lonely to spend Christmas alone. This was a good opportunity to increase his favorability. According to the system's prompts, Napoleon's favorability towards him has now reached trust, and he is ready to continue working hard to see what the next level of trust is. When Ning arrived at Napoleon's residence, he saw him sweeping the snow on the ground at the door. Napoleon, why are you sweeping the snow? Ning stepped forward and asked puzzledly, is it your landlord? I took the initiative to sweep the snow because I found that doing this kind of work that doesn't require the brain helps with thinking. Ning, let me help you, and after sweeping, we will go to Christina's estate to celebrate Christmas together. Napoleon, are you sure that lady will welcome a bumpkin from Corsica like me? She already welcomes me, the son of a cobbler. She probably won't mind another bumpkin from Corsica. Ning teased. Napoleon, that's different. You are her savior. She might even like you secretly. I'm just an outsider. Ning realized that Napoleon might not come if this continued, so she changed the subject. What were you thinking about when you were sweeping the snow just now? I was thinking, since skirmishers have an advantage in shooting against line infantry, why not use skirmishers as the basic form of infantry combat? Ning shook her head. You were probably misled because you saw that your classmates were well organized in skirmish formations at school. However, this is not the case. Everyone in the school is a non-commissioned officer, and most of them are nobles, so they can maintain order and morale when they form a scattered formation. In actual combat, the line infantry must be surrounded by non-commissioned officers to maintain morale. Once the formation is disbanded and turned into scattered soldiers, they will directly retreat. The conscripted line infantry do not have the same high fighting desire and initiative as the non-commissioned officers. The scattered soldiers of various countries are either mercenaries who fight for money and can exchange their military exploits for money, or they are criminals or robbers. These people like to kill and rob. In order to maintain the morale and fighting desire of these people, each country will also equip the scattered soldiers with female bartenders, who bring strong liquor and dangling breasts to stimulate the fighting desire of the scattered soldiers. Napoleon was shocked. Female bartenders? Yes, they are responsible for providing strong liquor and sex to the scattered soldiers. Ning said, as if he had actually seen it. In fact, he had never seen it at the front line, but he had read Hugo's 93. The opening of this masterpiece describes a group of Republican stragglers and the female bartenders assigned to them as the vanguard for the entire army, and found a rebel woman with a child. Napoleon shook his head. Crazy, I thought women went to the battlefield mainly in the form of Miss Christina and others. Ning, there are still many things you don't know, so come with me, I will teach you one by one. Napoleon curled his lips. Okay, but I still don't want to go to Miss Christina's manor, she will definitely not welcome me. Ning, how can you be sure? Maybe one of Christina's noble friends has already taken a fancy to you. Napoleon shook his head. Even if any lady takes a fancy to me, I will not be happy. I have decided to dedicate my life to the liberation of Corsica. Don't be so sure, Napoleon. You won't say that when you meet Josephine Beauharnais. And Ning, come along, just as if it were for your only friend. He calmly put himself in the position of only friend. Napoleon sighed, okay. Just think of it as going to taste the cooking of Miss Christina's Parisian chef. Chapter 44, What It's Like to Flirt with a Priest on Christmas Day. When Ning took Napoleon home, the carriage sent by Christina had arrived. Fanny stood beside the carriage and showed an I knew it expression when she saw Napoleon. And Ning, do you have any opinion about my friend? No. I'm just a maid. How dare I have an opinion about my master's friend? Napoleon, your maid seems to have an opinion about me. And Ning, no, she said herself that she dare not have an opinion about her master's friend. Come on in the car. Fanny, Miss Christina and her friends are worshipping in church. Shall we go to church together, or wait for the lady to return at the manor? And Ning thought about it and felt that France was a Catholic country after all. It would be unreasonable not to go to church on Christmas. So he said, let's go to church. I haven't been to church to pray for a long time. Napoleon was surprised and said, you actually go to church? And Ning, I am a devout Catholic. Come on. Napoleon shook his head and said, if you are a devout Catholic, I am a loyal subject of the King of France. And Ning laughed, don't say that, you still have to pretend, after all, today is Christmas. Come on, get in the car. And Ning got in the car first, followed by Napoleon, and finally Fanny. The carriage took the two to the largest church in Brienne. Many local nobles who came to worship had gathered at the church. When these people saw the carriage with the Duke of Orleans' coat of arms coming, they immediately stepped forward to try to get close to him, but when they saw Ning getting off the car, they were directly embarrassed. And Ning put on a high-handed style and greeted these local nobles, as if he was the Duke himself. Although Fanny's face was full of the desire to complain, she still served behind Ning faithfully. Napoleon was not as natural as the master and servant. He was very alert and put on a proud attitude, just like a toy tin soldier. And Ning heard some local nobles gossiping, why is the Duke's family mixed with this Corsican country bumpkin? Who knows? Maybe the Duke has set his eyes on Corsica and plans to turn it into his own fiefdom. And Ning thought, these people are indeed country nobles. They still hold feudal ideas and seize fiefdoms. Do they still think this is the Middle Ages? In a few years, these country nobles will probably become street lamp pendants. The urban revolution and rural revolution of the French Revolution are two different things. In the urban revolution, the progressive nobles still have the opportunity to transform themselves into new nobles, while the country nobles are much more unlucky. The peasants who can't make a living sent the country nobles to the gallows, and then burned all the feudal deeds found in the nobles' mansions. However, a few years later, the peasants began to miss the kindness of the nobles and joined the rebellion started by the royalists, slaughtering revolutionaries everywhere. It can only be said that this era is so magical. And Ning led Napoleon and Fanny all the way into the church, and happened to see Christina with a group of noble ladies. Christina was wearing a gorgeous blue dress, beautiful like a fairy in the lake. Although the country noble girls around her also tried hard to dress up, it can be seen at a glance that they are two levels from Christina. When Christina saw Ning, she immediately said sorry to the noble ladies, and then ran towards Ning with her skirt lifted. Andy. When she arrived in front of Ning, she braked suddenly, stood up straight, posed in a dignified manner, and extended her hand to Ning. And Ning held her hand and kissed the back of her hand. My Miss Christina, today you are the most beautiful flower in the world. Christina smiled from ear to ear, and then saw Napoleon behind Ning. Oh, Christina paused, obviously trying to recall what Napoleon's name was, and then she stretched out her hand to Napoleon. Hello, Mr. Bonaparte. Napoleon shook Christina's hand with a stiff movement. Hello, Miss Telestal, you look so beautiful today. It can be heard that Napoleon is trying hard to pronounce without a Corsican accent. But this effort unfortunately failed. People around are already laughing. But Christina didn't care about these, but smiled and said to Napoleon, thank you. I heard that you and Andy are very good friends. And Ning, it should be said that he is the only person in the entire Brienne Military Academy who regards me as a friend. Christina smiled even more brightly. Really? Thank you so much. I was worried that Andy, a civilian, couldn't make friends in the military academy. I even wanted to run directly from the cavalry classroom to the infantry to find him. And Ning, don't. As soon as you appear in front of the infantry classroom, I'm afraid our group will not be able to help but form a square formation. Christina laughed. After laughing, she said, by the way, didn't our cavalry department go to help you with your class that day? I saw you, and it seemed that you got a commendation from the instructor. And Ning, yes, when the instructor commended me, he did not forget to mock me for being a commoner. Christina sighed. How can this be? You at least got a medal. In the era of Louis XIV, you would have been given a noble title. And Ning, although it's only the lowest level of knighthood. But that's also a noble title. And Ning, okay, I'm not interested in noble titles. Have you finished your service? Let's go back to the manor. Christina, I'm done, but it's not good for you to leave right after you arrived. Don't you want to pray? At least pretend to do it. And Ning raised her eyebrows. Okay, I'll go pray. At this time, and Ning saw the door of the confessional open, and a man dressed as a noble came out. So he said, I'll go to the confessional. It's not that Ning did something guilty and needed to confess. He wanted to go to the confessional mainly because he was curious. After all, the future him had read a lot of books about confessionals, and the horny nuns in them were so great. And Ning said goodbye to Christina and entered the confessional. It was a very small compartment with a wooden grill in front of it. Behind the grill was a dark area, and you could vaguely see the priest's robe and the cross on the robe. The voice of the old priest came from the other side of the grill. My child, the Lord will listen to your confession. When Ning heard that it was a man's voice, his interest was reduced by half. I'm not interested if it's not a big-breasted nun sister. So Ning said, I came here with a question. Excuse me, can God create a stone that he can't lift? The priest opposite? 10 minutes later, the priest fled in a sweat. And Ning left the confessional satisfied. Christina, what did you say to the priest? And Ning, I asked him if God could create a stone that he couldn't lift. Christina looked puzzled. What's wrong with this question? Of course God can create it, he is omnipotent. Obviously Christina didn't understand. At this time, Napoleon laughed. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is, Andy, you are a genius. This paradox is amazing. Chapter 45, A Bond with Artillery. After teasing the priest, and Ning took Napoleon and Christina back to his manor. After a short lunch break at noon, Christina opened a literary salon in her garden in the afternoon. And Ning was basically a layman in literature. If he wanted to pretend to be a plagiarist, he could only copy the texts that were required to be memorized in junior high and high school. There must be something wrong with copying Zhu's I King's Moonlight over the Lotus Pond in France in the 18th century. It was even more wrong to copy Mr. Lu Xun's works. French noble ladies would never care about how many ways to write fennel beans. So Ning didn't say a word in the salon, silently listening to those country nobles reading those extremely awkward doggerel in front of Christina. And Napoleon seemed to be a literary critic. After each noble finished reading, he would jump out and comment sharply in French with extremely unstandard pronunciation. The nobles who were criticized by Napoleon were all furious and clamored to duel with Napoleon. Then when they saw Ning drinking tea next to Napoleon, they would quickly calm down. Ning's reputation as the duel king has been exaggerated several times over the past 6 months, and it has become well known among the country nobles. Because of Napoleon's sharp tongue, gradually no one spoke at the literary salon, and the salon became a chat tea party for girls. The men were bored, so they went to the garden to play tennis. Napoleon was short, so he would suffer a disadvantage in playing tennis, so he just ate snacks. Ning was caught by Christina to tell the noble ladies the story of duels, and she was like a fish in water among a group of ladies. The afternoon tea party passed quickly and transitioned seamlessly to the evening dance. Ning couldn't dance, so she could only sit and watch the dance. Napoleon could dance, but he didn't want to dance, so he chatted with Ning. But the two had a lot of topics to talk about, from mathematics to military affairs, so it wasn't boring. Christmas passed just like that. Then it was New Year's Day, and the last few days of 1780 passed so uneventfully. In the second year, the Brienne Military Academy still repeatedly taught the cadets how to drill in formations, and did not teach more advanced war theories at all. Finally, Ning understood that the goal of the Brienne Military Academy was to train non-commissioned officers. NCOs did not need advanced military theories. It was enough for them to manage the soldiers and make them line up. At most, they would be taught some personal combat skills. However, the mathematics, history and other courses offered by the Brienne Military Academy obviously benefited Napoleon a lot. Napoleon, like what was written in the biography of Napoleon that Ning had read, loved this story of Rome very much and was a die-hard Roman fan. Whenever he came to talk to Ning about Rome with great interest, and Ning knew that he had finished reading another biography about Rome. Napoleon's own money was basically used to buy Roman biographies, and the books of Rousseau, Montesquieu and others were basically bought and given to him by Ning. It can be said that Ning used his own financial resources to water Napoleon's cognition of the Enlightenment. At the end of the school year, the Brienne Military Academy held an exam for the entire grade. Napoleon ranked first, while Ning ranked 11th. In fact, Ning could have taken first place, because he had too many advantages. He could learn French and Latin with cheats, and he had advanced knowledge of mathematics from later generations. But Ning deliberately made a mistake and manipulated his score. Because he didn't want his grades to surpass Napoleon's. As the saying goes, there is no two suns in the sky, and there is only one sun in my heart, Mr. Napoleon. Unexpectedly, after the exam, Napoleon took the initiative to find Ning and expressed his regret. I always thought that you must have a higher score than me. Ning, exams also depend on on-the-spot performance. Your foundation is more solid than mine, so you performed better than me this time. Ning changed the subject. What are you going to do during the vacation? There is no such thing as summer vacation in the Brienne Military Academy, but there will be a short vacation when you are promoted to higher grade. Napoleon shrugged. No big deal, just stay in Brienne and read. Don't you want to go home? What are you talking about? My home is in Corsica, and it takes a long time to go home. But it only takes 2 days to get to Paris from here. Don't you plan to go back? Ning reminded Napoleon, I'm not from Paris, my home is in Seine, which belongs to the Normandy region, far from Paris. Napoleon said oh and suddenly laughed, you always tell me about the Enlightenment in Paris, and the interesting stories about Robespierre, Danton and others. I think you are an old Parisian. Ning also laughed. When he told Napoleon the story of himself and the future Jacobin leaders, he would involuntarily use the tone of an old friend, as if he had known them for many years. However, in fact, he had only known the leaders for a few months. Napoleon added, my biggest dissatisfaction during my 1 year in Brienne is that I didn't learn much about the art of war. I only learned how to line up. You can't win Corsica's independence by lining up. Ning shrugged, although I didn't learn much about the art of war, you learned mathematics. Mathematics is the basis of artillery use. Artillery can influence wars. It's not an exaggeration to say that artillery is the king of war. Napoleon said disapprovingly, isn't artillery just a large rolling ball? How much impact can it have? Ning raised his eyebrows. It was obvious that the 11-year-old Napoleon had not yet realized the importance of artillery. He was completely different from the artillery general who later knew the use of artillery like the back of his hand. Speaking of which, most of Napoleon's biographies did not mention Napoleon's encounter with artillery. It seemed that he became the artillery lieutenant in the blink of an eye, proficient in the use of artillery, and had a special liking for artillery. Ning, I have been to the battlefield and personally experienced the huge psychological pressure that artillery can cause to soldiers. In addition to being able to kill the enemy efficiently, artillery can also cause a strong blow to morale, which is quite fatal to an army with low cohesion. Napoleon looked at Ning. Is that so? Since that's what you said, it should be correct. But I really want to experience the morale suppression effect you mentioned. Without personal experience, it's hard for me to empathize with your statement. Ning shrugged. I'm afraid I can only wait until you go to the battlefield. The military academy will not use artillery to bombard students, right? However, Ning did not expect that he said this too early. At the beginning of the second year of Brienne, the instructors took the non-commissioned officers to a specially prepared bunker to experience the feeling of being bombarded by artillery. The artillery company stationed near Brienne was responsible for this teaching task, equipped with 6 12-pound infantry guns. These 6 guns were new artillery redesigned by the famous French artillery general D'Iberville, and the firepower projection efficiency was higher than that of traditional artillery. The result was that the cadets were pinned to the spot by 6 cannons and could do nothing except lower their heads and hold them. After the bombardment stopped, Napoleon, who was covered in dust, brushed the dirt off his hair and said to Ning, now I understand what you mean by the morale-damaging effect. It's just one artillery company. I can't imagine the scene of several companies firing more than a dozen cannons at the same time. Ning curled her lips. More than a dozen cannons? No, artillery should be like other weapons, concentrated together in large quantities to achieve the desired impressive results. Wait a minute, isn't this a famous saying of Napoleon himself? Oh my god, why did I say this myself? When Ning stopped talking because of his own slip of the tongue, Napoleon asked, "You think a dozen guns are not enough? How many guns do you plan to use together?" "Dozens." And Ning shook his head. No, if possible, we should concentrate hundreds of guns together, so that the fierce firepower can directly disintegrate the enemy. Napoleon took a breath and said, "If hundreds of guns are used together, the enemy will be finished." And Ning, "Yes, the enemy will be crushed." Humph. In this way, when the emperor concentrates the artillery and commands it personally in the future, he will think that I was the first to propose it, so that my position in the First French Empire will be as stable as Mount I. Every time the emperor wins a victory, he will think of me. Perfect. Chapter 46 Fight. As the days passed by at the Brienne Military Academy, Napoleon began to grow taller. Unfortunately, the others were either older than him or had good nutrition and developed earlier. In short, they all started to grow earlier. Not to mention Ning, who is already an adult of 18 years old. So in the end, Napoleon is still the shortest person in the class and even in the grade. As long as Ning, the backer, is not by Napoleon's side, he will inevitably be ridiculed by his classmates as a Corsican potato. One day after the beginning of summer, Ning's military uniform had a big hole, which was beyond the level that Fanny's sewing skills could handle, so he went to the tailor shop in the city to mend his clothes. When he came out of the tailor shop after mending his uniform, he saw a group of non-commissioned officers from the Brienne Military Academy running past excitedly. The leader shouted, "Hurry up, if you walk slowly you won't be able to see it. The Corsican potato is dueling with someone." And Ning was shocked. Napoleon was indeed sensitive and irritable, but because he always had Ning, his ally, by his side, his mood swings were within an acceptable range. And Napoleon should have been accustomed to being laughed at by his classmates. He often received praise from the monks who taught cultural courses in the school, and relied on this praise to maintain his self-esteem. In theory, there should not be such a violent outburst. And Ning hurriedly caught up with the cadets and asked loudly, "What's going on? Did anyone challenge Napoleon to a duel?" At this time, Ning still thought that Napoleon was too sarcastic and irritated some noblemen, and then someone threw his gloves at him. But the leading cadet replied, "No. He threw his gloves at others. Now he is being pinned to the ground and repaired." And Ning raised his eyebrows, turned around and said to Fanny, who was accompanying him to mend his clothes, "Go back by yourself, I'll go and take a look." Then he ran with the cadets who were much younger than him. Fanny held the mended clothes, sighed, and started walking home. When Ning followed a group of cadets to the scene, the cadets had already surrounded the two people who were fighting. The onlookers cheered for Napoleon's opponent, "Kill the Corsican dwarf. Ham him to death." And Ning was blocked outside and couldn't get in, so he could only yell to clear the way, "Stop." The school rules stipulate that fighting in school will result in confinement. The people outside turned their heads and saw Ning, and they retreated while shouting, "The servant of Corsican potato is here." And Ning said angrily, "I am not anyone's servant. When will you learn to respect the dignity of civilians?" As soon as he finished speaking, someone said sarcastically, "Where does the rude civilian have any dignity?" And Ning went straight to Latin. At that time, other European countries regarded speaking French as a symbol of culture, while in France, speaking Latin was the most impressive. And Ning shouted angrily in Latin, "A person's knowledge depends on his upbringing. You guys, who are ignorant, know nothing." Then he switched back to French, because most of these noble young masters were not very good at studying and their Latin scores were very low. "And Ning, look. You don't even know what I'm scolding you for. What qualifications do you, ignorant pigs, have to pretend to be elegant in front of me? It's better to say that you, a bunch of trash, have brought shame to your own family's title." The suppressive effect brought by Latin, coupled with Ning's personal force, immediately had an outstanding effect. The cadets all wilted. "Get out of the way. Let me in." And Ning shouted. The crowd in front of him parted like Moses parting the sea, and he finally saw Napoleon clearly in the innermost of the crowd. The short Napoleon was pressed down by a cadet who was much older than him, but he did not admit defeat. He was still trying to scratch the face of the person who suppressed him with his hands, leaving 2 bloody marks. And Ning shouted, "All right. Let go." However, his voice was ignored by Napoleon's opponent, so Ning went up and punched his opponent in the face. He never had any concerns about this group of nobles. After all, His backer was the Duke, the top noble in France, and he even had the right to inherit the throne. The guy riding Napoleon was knocked away by a Ning's punch and crawled to the side, spitting on the ground with broken teeth and blood foam. Napoleon was finally freed. He stood up and immediately ran to the flower bed next to him, picked up the hoe beside the flower bed and waved it to settle accounts with a fallen enemy. And Ning grabbed Napoleon and said, "Enough. If you go and hide him now, you will get into trouble. You don't want to be blamed for murder, do you? What's going on?" Napoleon pointed at the man lying on the ground angrily and shouted, "He said my father was a traitor to Corsica. He betrayed Poily. He said I was the son of a traitor." The man on the ground turned over and got up, sneering, "Aren't you? You are now a French nobleman, registered with the Personnel Bureau, an officially certified noble. This is the reward you get for betraying Corsica." Napoleon said angrily, "No. No? Then where did the money for your studies come from? I heard that it was His Majesty the King who rewarded your father like a dog, rewarding him for serving France for 10 years. Your father, the sergeant, has betrayed Corsica for 10 years. Napoleon was furious and was about to rush up again with a hoe in his hand, but Ning held him back. "Don't let your anger replace your reason." Ning said loudly, "Think about what you told me before." Napoleon told Ning more than once that he disdained to argue with this bunch of idiots and that he would use the knowledge he learned from France to liberate Corsica in the future. He said that these arrogant classmates would be his future defeated opponents and were not worth his current anger. But it was obvious that these words had been thrown behind Napoleon's head in anger. After Ning's reminder, Napoleon seemed to finally remember those words, and his anger gradually subsided. He shook off Ning's hand that was grabbing his shoulder, and glared at the enemy who had just stood up. "Huh? Celebrate. You saved your life today because Andy is here." The big boy who is several heads taller than Napoleon spat on the ground and said angrily, "You are wrong. If he hadn't come, you would have been bruised and naked this time. You will be so embarrassed that you will never dare to enter the classroom again in your life. Ning, enough. Get out of here." His roar was quite deterrent. The guy who bullied Napoleon walked away cursing, not caring at all that Ning had just knocked out his teeth with a punch. He probably didn't dare to care because he was afraid that Ning would really duel with him. Seeing this scene, the cadets who were watching also dispersed in twos and threes, and only Ning and Napoleon were left in the whole garden. Napoleon wiped his face and cursed, "I'm tired of the ridicule of these foreign guys. They are just richer than me, but their spirit is far less noble than mine. I want to write a letter to my father. I want to go back to Corsica and join the Corsica struggle." Ning remembered that the biography of Napoleon did record that he wrote a similar letter to his father, wanting to return to Corsica. Ning still remembered that Napoleon's father's response was very simple, "We have no money, so you have to stay there." Ning, do you know, Napoleon, there is a fable about the ancient Eastern country. Napoleon asked in confusion, "The ancient Eastern country? Is it India?" "No, no. It is a country that is more eastern than India, the land of gold described by Marco Polo. The fable says that if God wants to entrust an important task to a person, he must first make his heart and body suffer, that is, let him experience suffering. Napoleon, all the suffering you experience today is for the future rapid rise." Napoleon pursed his lips, obviously waiting for Ning to continue. "Ning, you should learn knowledge in France and wait for the opportunity. When the opportunity comes, you can not only liberate Corsica." Napoleon frowned, "But I don't care about any other place except Corsica in my hometown. That's now, it will change in the future. Ning, if you want to write to your father, just write, but before you write, think about your family's situation, think about your family conditions, and then calmly speculate whether he will agree." Napoleon was silent for a few seconds and shook his head. "No, my father will not agree." Ning, "Right. You only need to think about this kind of thing to know. Napoleon, use your brain, don't act on impulse." Napoleon held it in for a while, then sighed, "You are right, I was too impulsive. I'm sorry." Ning was shocked. "What the hell, that Napoleon apologized to me." Chapter 47 Listeners and Storytellers. While Ning was shocked by Napoleon's apology, Napoleon said, "But I still want to write to my father." "Ning, why?" "I just want to give it a try." Napoleon replied, "Although there are some happy things in Brienne, such as reading Plutarch's books and chatting with you, the rest of the things are depressing." Ning was amazed that she was on par with Plutarch, a Greek writer from the ancient Roman era. Plutarch wrote the lives of the heroes of Greece and Rome. According to various versions of Napoleon's biography, Napoleon was very obsessed with this book in his youth. Ning, who successfully ranked alongside ancient Greek writers, was amazed and said, "Okay, you can give it a try." So that night, Napoleon sent a long letter to his father. A few weeks later, a reply from Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, arrived. The next morning after receiving the reply, Ning met Napoleon on the way to school. The dwarf looked a little sad, like an eggplant hit by frost. "Napoleon, my father asked me to stay in Brienne because we had no money, exactly the same as we predicted before." Ning smiled. "Congratulations, you can spend more time with your favorite Plutarch." Napoleon shook his head. "I have read the Heroes of Greece and Rome several times, and I can even recite some passages in it." "Then you can try to read Spartacus." Ning suddenly remembered that the novel version of Spartacus was written by an Italian in the 19th century, and it has not yet been born. Napoleon frowned. "Spartacus? Is he the slave who revolted? What's so good about a slave?" Ning replied, "He is the same as us, an oppressed class. I am a commoner, and I am laughed at by the nobles all day long. Although you are a noble registered in the personnel bureau, you are also despised and bullied all day long because of your poverty. So we should empathize with Spartacus's situation." Napoleon was shocked. "Okay, then where can I see the detailed story of this slave?" Ning was silent. At this time, Spartacus was still an ordinary historical figure. Giovanni's famous work that portrayed him as a revolutionary in the ancient Roman era had not yet been born. "Ning, you can listen to me. I also heard my grandfather tell me when I was a child." Ning not only read Giovanni's acclaimed novel, but also read the masterpiece of the famous director Kubrick, and later watched the American TV version. However, the American TV version is somewhat inferior to Kubrick's work. But it doesn't matter. Now Ning can tell Napoleon about Spartacus' life in vivid detail. Napoleon frowned. "It's really interesting. Your grandfather was also a leatherworker. How did he know about the slave uprising in the Roman era?" Ning, "Many stories are passed down by word of mouth." Napoleon shrugged and didn't delve into it. From that day on, in addition to talking to Napoleon about Rousseau, Montesquieu and Voltaire, Ning would also tell him about the Spartacus uprising. Ning then discovered that he actually had some talent as a storyteller. In this era, he could take a lute to the tavern to be a bard, and in modern times, he could drive a taxi. The days passed by so uneventfully, and Ning's life at the Brienne Military Academy entered its third year. This year, the instructors began to teach the cadets how to build fortifications and handle explosives. In this era, there was a special branch of the army called grenadiers, and generally tall and strong soldiers were selected to serve, because they had to throw bombs as heavy as small lead balls at the enemy's heads. Because of this, grenadiers are usually good at close combat, and they have to take on ceremonial tasks from time to time. Brienne Military Academy didn't know which graduate would be assigned to lead the grenadiers, so they simply taught everyone how to handle explosives and throw bombs. During the bomb-throwing class, Napoleon was laughed at by the nobles again because he was short and there was no way he would be selected into the grenadiers. The stubborn Napoleon threw the unlit bomb as far as the French trash, and his arm was strained for this. For the next few days, Napoleon grimaced whenever he used his dominant hand, and finally had to try to hold a pen with his right hand like a normal person. Ning joked, "You look a lot more normal now." If someone else had joked like this, Napoleon would have roared at him a long time ago, but Ning had no problem saying this, and the Corsican boy just smiled. There was another change in the third year. Brienne Military Academy divided the school's large garden into pieces and gave them to the cadets to take care of. Ning asked the head instructor what qualities this was to cultivate in the students. The head instructor replied, "The school wanted to save money on hiring gardeners, so it was left to the students to take care of the garden." The head instructor would grade everyone's garden every week, and those who didn't take care of it seriously would be put in solitary confinement. Ning didn't want to do gardening, so she wanted to throw the work to Fanny. As a result, Fanny was caught by the principal on the first day she came to school to take care of the garden. So Ning was scolded. Later, Napoleon said that Ning didn't want to do gardening, so she would leave it to him. It just so happened that the area that Ning was assigned was right next to Napoleon's area. So from then on, Napoleon could be seen taking care of the garden in the school garden from time to time, and he would read in the garden after finishing his work. Anyone who wanted to approach this small world would be driven away by Napoleon waving a hoe. Another year passed, and the 14-year-old Napoleon had caught up with everyone's height, although he still looked a little short, but everyone gradually began to use the derogatory term dwarf less. One holiday afternoon, Napoleon suddenly found a Ning. "Hey, Andy, are you free at noon?" And Ning, "Why, do you want to hear a story again?" Recently, and Ning began to tell Napoleon heroes of Sui and Tang dynasties and 7 heroes and 5 gallants. The Oriental stories fascinated the Corsican boy. "No, it's my brother Joseph. He wrote to me and told me that after graduating from the seminary, he didn't plan to become a priest, but to join the army." And Ning said, "Oh." He remembered that this matter was also recorded in the biography of Napoleon. At that time, Napoleon wrote a letter to criticize Joseph. So Ning had a clear idea. "What do you think? What kind of person is your brother Joseph?" Napoleon curled his lips. "He is a frivolous guy. He can be a good garrison officer. I mean, that kind of pretentious army is good-looking but useless. He is handsome and humorous. He can be at ease in social occasions and tell frivolous jokes, but he can never go to the battlefield." And Ning nodded. "There is no room for frivolous guys on the battlefield. In addition, he can get a generous salary as a priest, and we need this salary now. You know, Andy, my family is very poor. We only rely on the little salary my father earns from managing the royal nursery to support the lives of 5 of us. My younger brothers Lucien and Louis should go to school, and my sister Pauline also needs education and a dowry to marry. The king only lets Joseph and I go to school for free, and my brothers and sisters have to pay to go to school. And Ning, your sister Pauline can come to the Brienne Military Academy, just like those poor eldest daughters of noble families." Napoleon glanced at Ning with dissatisfaction. "What are you talking about? I hope my sister can live like a normal girl." And Ning, "But your family can't afford Paulina's dowry." Napoleon was silent. He took a breath and stared at Ning. "Sometimes, Andy, you are quite annoying. I'm just stating the facts." And Ning shrugged. With the current relationship between him and Napoleon, it was okay to be a little annoying occasionally. Napoleon shook his head. "Let's talk about Joseph. For the sake of his brothers and sisters, he should become a priest, but now he tells me that he wants to be an officer. The salary of an officer is not as generous as that of a priest. And Ning, after all, priests are the first class." "That's right. I can't imagine what Joseph would look like as an officer. What branch of the army could he go to? Artillery? However, artillery needs to be proficient in mathematics, and my brother is a fool and doesn't understand mathematics at all. As for the navy, can my playboy brother endure the monotonous sailing life? No, I can't." And Ning smiled and said, "Look, you have already made your own judgment. You don't need my advice at all." Napoleon was silent for a few seconds, then took a deep breath. "Yes, I have made a decision. I think I just need a listener." "You are a good listener, Andy." And Ning, "Of course. If you have any troubles in the future, you can come to me and talk about it." After saying this, and Ning could already imagine the scene where Napoleon, who would be the French emperor in the future, would run to her angrily, slam the table and complain, "Why are things in Spain always so bad?" Chapter 48. At the end of Brienne. The 5th year of the Brienne Military Academy began with the defeat of France in the 7 Years' War, which was 30 years late. Prussia actually won this war 30 years late. In the history that Ning was familiar with, Prussia was able to win because the Russian Tsar Peter II was a German bastard. No, it should be called a Prussian bastard here. When the Russian army was greatly superior, Prussian bastard Peter II took the initiative to seek peace with Prussia, returned all the occupied lands and turned to form an alliance with Prussia. But at this time, Russia was already the Russia of Catherine II, and the Prussian bastard Tsar had died long ago. As a result, the Prussian army actually defeated the Russian army. And Ning thought that it might be because Prussia at this time had been ruled by the enlightened Frederick the Great for a long time, and its strength had become stronger. Thinking this way, France's situation would be dangerous after the outbreak of the Great Revolution a few years later. After all, the first army that intervened in the revolution was mainly Prussian and Austrian. The Prussian army was the most aggressive, and it conquered Verdun, the gateway to Paris, and was then hit head-on by the revolutionary French army led by Dumouriez and Valmy. However, the troops that intervened in this time and space were probably not the weak and vulnerable Prussian army brought by the Duke of Brunswick, but the elite Prussian army of Frederick the Great. Will the scene of 150 years later be repeated in the 17th century? Is France really going to start speaking German? While Ning was so worried, Napoleon beside him was talking. There is nothing to be afraid of the French. The Prussians can defeat them and make them bow down, so can we Corsicans. And Ning freed himself from his worries and glanced at Napoleon. I have to remind you that I am also a Frenchman. My motherland has just lost a war and paid compensation. In fact, Ning did not have much sense of belonging to France. After all, the noble instructors who were under the old Paris flag at school often made things difficult for him. This strengthened his determination to be a fence-sitter. But at this time, you still have to perform a little bit, otherwise it will look too heartless. Napoleon looked a little embarrassed. Well, I got carried away and didn't consider that. Well, although you are French, you are a very nice person and a close friend of mine. Okay, don't be too sad. Ning, not really. I just think that France's financial situation is going to be ruined. Originally, they were borrowing money to fight the war, hoping to get a big bite after defeating Prussia, but now it's all gone. I guess the king will raise taxes soon. The tax increase was rejected by the Supreme Court as being unconventional, and the king was forced to convene the Estates General after a 160-year hiatus. As a result, the Estates General shouted that the Third Estate was everything and decided to turn France into a constitutional monarchy and formulate a constitution. The curtain of the Great Revolution was thus opened. Napoleon didn't think so much. He asked Ning, maybe the king will invite the banker who was dismissed before, I remember his name was Necker or something, back to be the Minister of Finance. There is an old saying in the East, a good cook cannot cook without rice, and Necker cannot make livre, and Ning replied. Napoleon shrugged, then it can't be done. What does it have to do with us? You and I are civilians, and one is a Corsican. We can laugh at the plight of the King of France openly. Napoleon, think about it. The king wants to increase taxes. According to French tradition, he must convene the three-level parliament. What will happen if he gathers opinion leaders from all over the country to Paris at this time? Napoleon looked puzzled. What will happen? And Ning pretended to be profound. Think about Napoleon yourself. I have told you so much? Napoleon thought for a while. Do you think social contradictions will always erupt? But didn't you say before that a natural disaster is needed for an eruption? And Ning, yes, whether there is a natural disaster determines whether the eruption will be carried out in a relatively mild way or in a more tragic and stormy way. The French Revolution happened just after a natural disaster. In fact, this is also inevitable. The natural disasters in 1788 also aggravated the financial predicament of the royal family. Napoleon shrugged. Well, although you are always right, I can only say that I think you are too mysterious this time. If you are right, you will become the person I admire most in my life. Good. I want your admiration. Huh? Napoleon actually admires someone other than Caesar? Is there something wrong? At this time, Napoleon changed the subject. My sister Pauline wrote to me and said that she was going to study at the Brienne Military Academy like Miss Christina. I told her in the letter. And Ning, you actually wrote to him about Christina. Well, because I found that there was nothing to talk about with my sister, I had to use Miss Christina to fill the content of the letter, otherwise the letter would be too short and it would seem that I was not enthusiastic enough. And Ning, and now you regret it, right? Your sister also wants to come and learn from the Orleans girl. Because Christina is the daughter of the Duke of Orleans, and Ning and Napoleon privately jokingly called her Orleans girl. It just so happened that Christina also admired the Orleans girl in history, so she decided to join the army. Napoleon looked a little depressed. Yes, I hope my sister can live a normal life as a woman. After all, Joseph is now a priest, and I will graduate soon. Our salary can greatly alleviate the family's financial difficulties. But she actually came to learn from Miss Christina. And Ning smiled and said, I think everyone's choice should be respected. When I persuaded Joseph to continue to be a priest, you didn't ask me to respect Joseph's choice. Let's put one thing first. Or do you think your sister Paulina is not suitable for joining the army? At this time, and Ning's impression of Napoleon's sister Paulina came from two aspects. One was the game Saints of Chess, in which Paulina was a heroic, flat-chested beautiful girl in a short skirt, commanding a line infantry team galloping on the battlefield. The other was a series of videos of the game Conchi created by the B Station, up-host young magician. The content of the video was that Napoleon, several close marshals, and his sister Paulina traveled to the world in the game and began to liberate slaves on the alien wasteland. The Paulina in that series of videos was also heroic. So Ning's impression of Paulina was completely distorted, and she felt that there was nothing wrong with Napoleon's sister joining the army. Napoleon sighed. My sister is very lively, like a tomboy. Judging from her personality alone, maybe she is quite suitable for joining the army. Look. It's true, isn't it? And Ning thought excitedly. And Ning, that's it. But I don't want her to go to the battlefield. According to your prediction of the future, Andy, France will be in war for years, right? And Ning, indeed. Then what are you going to do? Leave your beloved sister on the island of Corsica? Napoleon was silent. He pondered for a long time before answering, I don't know. The conditions in Corsica are not good. My brothers and sisters can't learn anything in Corsica. There are not even a few books on that island. If I hadn't come here, I wouldn't even see Plutarch's book. And Ning patted Napoleon on the shoulder. That's it. Napoleon pursed his lips, glanced at Ning, and sighed. You reminded me. Yes, my brothers and sisters should leave Corsica and increase their knowledge. Let's leave it at that. The next question, do you think I should join the army, or take the school's recommendation to go to the Paris Military Academy? And Ning answered immediately, of course I'm going to Paris. He paused, then came up with an excuse that Napoleon couldn't refuse. Officers have high salaries. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Little Follower. Napoleon nodded. You and I are thinking the same thing. What Corsica needs is not a sergeant, but a real officer. So what subject do you think I should learn? And Ning said firmly, artillery. You are so good at math, it would be a waste if you don't learn artillery. You said so. Napoleon looked proud. I knew you would suggest so. So what about you? Will you also go to the military academy? And Ning, of course I will, and I will also study artillery. And Ning did this not only to get closer to Napoleon, but also for another consideration, artillery safety. The main target of artillery in this era is not the artillery of the opposite side, because the accuracy of artillery in this era is too poor, and the hit rate of targeting enemy artillery must be touching. Therefore, in the war, the artillery of both sides will bombard the enemy's infantry as the first target, and the artillery does not need to charge into battle, so it is safer to be in artillery than other arms. And Ning is afraid of death, so he doesn't want to join the infantry. Infantry officers have to stand in the first row of the queue and lead the charge. Moreover, officers are the first target of the enemy's skirmishers and chasseurs. And Ning does not want to be a magnet that attracts bullets on the battlefield. So being an artilleryman is good, safe, and suitable for people like Ning who want to slack off on the battlefield in the future. But Ning cannot tell the truth. So he said to Napoleon passionately, artillery is the decisive branch of the army in the future, and it can even determine the victory or defeat of a battle. So of course I want to be an artillery officer, which will have a much greater impact on the war than those infantry officers who lead the charge. As an infantry officer, even if you can break through the opposite line in one go, there are countless more behind it, and it will not change the entire battlefield at all. In this era, even the British lobster soldiers who played the thin red line would certainly not let the entire front have only one layer. There would definitely be reserve line infantry behind them. The Russian army would even place the animals all over the mountains and plains. It was useless to break through the first line of defense, as they would come up with bayonets from behind. So Ning's words were all excuses for his fear of death. Napoleon heard another meaning. You are absolutely right about the outcome of the war. We must be the ones who can dominate the outcome of the war. Then Napoleon suddenly sighed. Alice, it's a pity that you are not a Corsican, otherwise I really want to invite you to join the liberation of Corsica. And Ning complained in his heart, don't think about your Corsican liberation anymore. There is nothing good about that broken island. It's all mountains. But on the surface, and Ning said seriously, independence is something that can only be obtained through one's own struggle, and it will be rare. Independence granted by others will not last long after all. Historically, Napoleon had always been thinking about the independence of Corsica after the Great Revolution. He even returned to his hometown and wanted to launch a riot like the Parisians did when they captured the Bastille, but he always failed. Later, he broke up with Corsican national hero Polly and was stabbed in the back before he finally gave up the dream of Corsica's independence. He left Corsica with his mother and accepted his fate as a Frenchman. It seems that although Ning has gained a very high status in Napoleon's heart, He still can't let him give up this ideal he has always had. He still has to be hit by reality before he will change. Not long after Ning and Napoleon had this conversation, Napoleon was recommended by the Paris Military Academy because of his excellent grades and was going to Paris to study artillery. Ning himself wrote a letter to the Duke of Orleans, and with the recommendation of the Duke of Orleans, he was admitted to the Paris Military Academy. Napoleon took the initiative to ask to go to Paris with Ning. He wanted to save the fare to Paris. This is what Napoleon said to Ning: "Fortunately, I can use the carriage of your close friend, otherwise I can only walk to Paris." And Ning laughed at this as a joke, but he actually knew that Napoleon would really do this. After all, according to Napoleon's biography, Napoleon walked more than half of the way to his post in the army. Yes, this guy walked across most of France because he was poor. In addition, Ning did not pay for the fare himself. In fact, he used Christina's carriage. Christina also graduated from Brienne. Unlike the non-commissioned officers who only had the rank of sergeant after graduation, she was directly awarded the rank of lieutenant and was assigned to the garrison of the Palace of Versailles with other noble ladies to become the royal guard of the Queen. Yes, the Queen really had a garrison composed of all poor noble ladies, and all the ladies in this garrison were officers. It is said that this is because the Queen felt that the officers' uniforms were more beautiful and in line with her own aesthetics. Because of this, the Versailles court had to pay officer salaries to an entire unit of female knights, plus the daily maintenance of their horses, which was another huge expense. It can only be said that she is worthy of being the Queen of Deficit. One day in May 1785, Ning and Napoleon boarded Christina's carriage and set off for Paris. Fanny took another carriage with Christina's personal servant. When the carriage began to move forward, Christina leaned against the window and looked at the manor outside sadly. "It's over now. These 5 years have passed in the blink of an eye. And Ning, are you reluctant to leave?" "A little bit." Christina sighed. "These are the 5 freest years I have lived since I was born. Every day is fulfilling and happy. And Ning, you have at least gained 5 years of freedom and happiness. This is what you earned by fighting on the battlefield." Christina smiled. "You helped me get it. It was not me who fought, but you." "And Ning, I didn't do anything. I just ran away with you. You also defeated the robbers who came to rob. Have you forgotten?" "Just robbers." And Ning shrugged. Christina continued, "Alexandra is obsessed with this story, as well as the story of your duel with 2 generations of the Marcus descendants. She has always wanted to see your heroic deeds with her own eyes, but you haven't dueled with anyone in 5 years." And Ning raised her eyebrows. "Alexandra is the lady who likes to wear a blue dress? The one with big breasts?" "Yes, the one with flaxen hair. She came back excited after dancing with you, and said that you kept staring at her breasts. That night she was waiting for you to invite her again, and she turned down all the invitations from other people." And Ning was shocked. Is there such a thing? He recalled that he and Alexandra had only danced once, and he stepped on her feet several times. "And Ning, she was actually waiting for me? I thought she couldn't walk because I stepped on her feet, so she kept sitting there." Christina smiled and said, "You really thought so?" Later, when there was a dance, Alexandra kept expecting you to come again, but you didn't go. And Ning, why should I go there? Step on another lady's feet. In fact, if he was not bad at dancing, and Ning would like to go to dances every day. The reason is very simple: the evening dresses of young ladies in this era are all low-cut. Even if you don't want to take advantage of others at the dance, the oil will go to your body automatically, which is so cool. And Ning is a vulgar person and has not been able to get rid of vulgar tastes. He originally wanted to learn dancing from Fanny, but after dancing a few times, Fanny refused to let him go. "You are going to break my feet, how can I work then?" So 5 years have passed, and Ning still hasn't mastered the dancing skills. This is unlike his swordsmanship. As a cadet of Brienne, Ning has received complete swordsmanship training. Now he has learned a variety of sword attacking techniques, and he is no longer the rookie who can only rely on the system's defense and counterattack but not attack. Perhaps it is precisely because Ning has made great progress in swordsmanship that none of the cadets who received swordsmanship training with him dared to challenge him to a duel. Not only that, they also developed a habit of avoiding Ning when they saw the gloves on his hands. Christina didn't know all this. She looked at Ning with a smile and asked, "What do you think of Alexandra? If you write to her, she will be very happy." Ning recalled what Alexandra looked like, and then found that he could not think of anything except her strong chest muscles. He couldn't even remember the girl's appearance clearly. Christina sighed. Look at you like this, I really can't remember it. Poor Alexandra, you fell in love with such a ruthless person. At this time, Napoleon, who had been silently looking out a window, suddenly spoke up. Andy is not a ruthless person, he just has great ambitions. You probably can't imagine how grand his vision is. Christina smiled and glanced at Napoleon. It seems that your little follower admires you very much? And Ning was shocked. How can you call the future emperor a little follower? Obviously, I am his follower, okay. But Napoleon was not angry at all. He said seriously, it seems that this is indeed the case, but Andy and I are like-minded comrades. I even want to invite him to join the cause of Corsica's independence, but he told me that independence cannot rely on others, and we must fight for it ourselves. Just don't think about your Corsican independence. And Ning smiled and said, Napoleon is a Corsican independence fan. He dreams of separating his hometown from France. Napoleon frowned. It's not separated. Corsica has never been a part of France, so it doesn't matter if it is separated. It should be said that things should be restored to their original state. Christina asked doubtfully, but as far as I know, Mr. Bonaparte, you are a French noble certified by the Civil Service Bureau. Napoleon looked a little embarrassed for a moment. That is a stopgap measure. For the independence of Corsica, I have to learn the strengths of my enemies. Christina smiled. Is that so, Andy? You are a cute little follower. And Ning wanted to hold her forehead. I hope that the future French emperor will forget the little usurpation of the daughter of the Duke of Orleans. Chapter 50. What I saw on the way back. In order to prevent Christina from offending Napoleon again, and Ning forcibly changed the subject. Speaking of which, haven't all the servants of the manor left? The carriage at the back should be too full, right? Christina replied, of course there is no room. There are only Fanny and my personal maid in the carriage at the back. The other servants have to stay in the manor. My father seems to have forgotten that he bought a manor, so the servants have to stay here to maintain the manor. And Ning raised her eyebrows and suddenly had an idea. She turned her head and asked Napoleon, where does your sister Paulina live in Brienne? The school dormitory. Napoleon nodded, yes, where else can she live? My family has no money. At this time, Christina followed Ning's train of thought and suggested excitedly, you can live in my manor. Anyway, the servants of the manor will not be fired. To maintain the operation of the manor, your sister moving in will not cost my family any more money. Everything is ready. Napoleon frowned slightly. It's not good to receive such a favor for no reason, right? This is not a favor, it's a convenience. Brienne's dormitory conditions are very poor. Alexandra often complains that there are lice on the bed and asks them to dry their own quilts. And Ning, you don't want Paulina to sleep on a bed with lice, do you? Napoleon curled his lips. In fact, in Corsica, it is rare to have no lice. But you can get better conditions for your sister, why not? And Ning said, Paulina herself must want to sleep on a bed without lice. Napoleon was silent for a few seconds and nodded, okay, I'll write a letter to Paulina. Christina, then when I arrive in Paris, I will write a letter to the housekeeper and ask the manor to prepare to receive a noble lady from Corsica. She can sleep in my room. Outside my room, I can see the flower beds carefully cared for by the gardener. The scenery is very beautiful. Napoleon just nodded shyly. Obviously he was not used to accepting other people's kindness. And Ning reminded, is there a more appropriate way to express it at this time? Napoleon pursed his lips and said reluctantly, thank you, Miss Tillistel. Christina smiled and looked very happy. She asked Napoleon again, is this your first time in Paris? Napoleon shook his head, no, my father brought me here last time when I went to the Civil Service Bureau, together with my brother Joseph. So what is your impression of Paris? Napoleon was silent for a few seconds, and then he said, there is not much manure on the streets, it is very clean. And Ning and Christina laughed out loud. Brienne is a small town, without a sewer system like Paris, so you can often smell the smell left by manure trucks on the streets. Walking a little to the side of where Ning lives is a vast field, and you can smell the fragrance of soil. However, the sewers in this time and space in Paris were repaired during the reign of Louis XIV, so you can no longer see the grand scene of manure all over the streets. Back then, it was because Paris was too dirty that the French noblemen began to wear high heels to avoid the embarrassment of pooping every time they went out. Seeing Ning and Christine laughing, Napoleon blushed and said, also, there are so many people, the streets are full of people. Ning, indeed, there are only tens of thousands of people in the city of Brienne, while there are millions of people living together in Paris. There are so many people that collecting their feces can become an industry, and Knights oil workers can even form a guild. Napoleon was shocked. Knights oil workers guild. There are so many Knights oil workers. Christine was also shocked. Really? There is also a Knights oil workers guild. Then she and Napoleon looked at each other. Napoleon, Miss Telestal, don't you know? I don't know. Christina shrugged. My activities in Paris are mainly at my home and various social venues, such as salons and balls. I don't know the Knights oil collectors, nor do I know the people who manage them. And Ning, I don't know either. In fact, I just said it casually. Napoleon stared at Ning. So you were bragging casually. I have noticed that sometimes when you are happy, you will say some bragging words. And Ning, isn't this normal? Which man doesn't like to brag? Especially when you get together. As long as you don't brag when reporting military intelligence and seek truth from facts, don't be so serious at other times. Napoleon curled his lips. You taught me to be realistic. Christina smiled and said, it seems that he is not only your little follower, but also your student. And Ning, no, he and I are in the same grade, just a little older than him, so I just teach him some life experience. At this time, the coachman knocked on the front window of the carriage. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the post station ahead. We need to change horses. You can get off and rest. Christina answered loudly, got it. Soon the carriage stopped, and Ning got off first, and then turned around to support Christina. Christina wore a green long dress that was very suitable for an outing today. Because it was not a dress, it did not have a low collar and covered her chest tightly. But the corset at the waist still highlighted her waist and lifted her chest muscles to look very majestic. Christina smiled and said, don't stare at my chest, you should go to see Alexandra, she will be very happy. And Ning, did that Alexandra also join the Queen's Guard? Yes, we will be on duty together in Versailles. And Ning, is that so? Then maybe we will have a chance to meet again in the future. During the Great Revolution. In terms of time, this Alexandra should be able to witness the landing of the French crown. Napoleon also got out of the car, but he deliberately kept a distance from Ning Christina and stood far away to stretch his muscles. At this moment, there was a commotion nearby. A group of farmers angrily surrounded a farmer who was standing on a box. But this farmer had a belt tied around his shoulders. Ning realized that this farmer was probably the legendary bailiff. The French tax bailiff was not a fixed official position. In fact, in rural France at that time, because the nobles no longer cared about things, the task of collecting taxes had always been borne by the farmers themselves in turn. In other words, the farmers would take turns to serve as bailiffs and collect taxes from their neighbors. Because everyone in the village knew each other well, and the taxes in rural France had always been very heavy, everyone was left penniless. The bailiff was shouting at the top of his lungs, I am not the one who collects the tax. Don't say you can't pay it, I know it very well. Another peasant shouted, what about you? You still have an old hen at home. You should pay more tax. The bailiff, I paid it. That's why I came to collect it from you. I don't believe it. Your old hen is still there. And Ning watched the peasants clamoring silently. Just by looking at the appearance of these peasants, it was obvious that they were penniless. But this would not reduce the king's tax. In the noise, and Ning vaguely felt that something was brewing, and in a few years, it would erupt in an amazing way, shocking all the courts in Europe. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.